Okay, Mule, I'm going to open with a joke this week. You ready for my joke?
I'm always ready for a joke.
All right. What's this sound?
Hi.
It's a it's
Turtle orgasm.
it's a neo-Nazi falling 200 feet off the Hitler's favorite hike.
Ba-dum-tish. Womp womp.
How you doing?
I'm great. I'm even better now. It
Yeah,
is really funny when Nazis fall off Nazi mountains,
it's
isn't
good
it?
as
That's
fuck, isn't it?
one
Yeah.
of the funniest things that could ever happen. It's Red Planet. Welcome. It's a me and Sophie show, which means, oh boy, you better be ready for some British stuff.
Ooh,
Uh-oh. Uh,
blimey.
but well, it's all very easy to sit here and complain about Britain. But Sophie, why don't you tell me about some of the stuff that you've done to try and make Britain a better place this week? I.e., what's the most base thing you did this week or since the last time we were live?
It's been a couple of weeks. I've done a couple of things. Last week, I was at the massive Palestine protest. It's been a year of the genocide, horribly, unfortunately, etc. I'll probably chat a bit more about the protest. In fact, I will. It's in the news. We're going to talk about it. But yeah, I went down to that. It was the first march I've been to in a while because I've been recovering from a big life explosion and I've not been super public or going places, but I went with some friends. It was lovely. Made a little sign. It was the writing on the wall from the Feast of Belshazzar, which is the story of Belshazzar, who's this biblical king. All his ancestors are like, we're not going to raid the Temple of Jerusalem. It's a sacred place. It's not our religion, but we're not going to fuck with that. And Belshazzar is like, I want to have a ball and feast. So raid the Temple of Jerusalem, bring me all their fancy gold goblets and plates and shit. I want to eat off that. The room goes dark. A big hand appears and writes on the wall in Hebrew, your kingdom will fall. You have been weighed and found wanting, and your days are numbered. And I thought
Fuck
that
yeah.
this was a fun, thing to play with poking at the empire collapsing. It was good to be out there. Good vibes, good times. The friends I was with were marching with the Jews against Zionism block, so then I wound up with my Hebrew sign next to them, and some people were like, "Oh, you're Jewish," and I was like, "No."
Yeah.
anyway, I'll chat more about the protest a bit. The other thing I've been up to is more community building. I've been talking a little bit on the show about how we're doing group vegan meals. I've been doing some more group cooking stuff. The more I plug into this like big cooking for people as a way to build community, the more I think it's really important to like let people know about it. So that's why I'm highlighting it on the show this week, because I think that people should know, like, actually just getting together and having a massive scran with your friends. It's a big deal. It really helps. We've been doing the group vegan meal. We had the second round of that last week. I had a big Sunday roast today with some friends. Yeah, it's lovely. It's a lovely time. Mule, what's the most basic thing you done this fortnight?
Yeah, so I'm constantly doing chair related stuff, reading radical HR policy review stuff. So, I think I've talked about this before. I've been doing it for a long time, but like reading some really interesting stuff about, how to have a radical disciplinary policy and a radical conflict policy in your organization. And even the reason I'm mentioning it again is I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm still doing this base thing that I said I did the other, I'm not cheating. It's because I actually put into practice the stuff that I've learned about conflict. So there was a couple of comrades in the union, two of whom, they're both my good close friends, and also they're close friends with each other. And I think this is the reason that you have to be prepared for things like this when you organize, because when you meet people organizing, you share a lot in common, like all the time, like not just your material conditions, but also you have that revolutionary togetherness where you are literally comrades, your friends' comrades. It's a deeper thing than being just friends when you're friends and comrades. And you might think that conflict will never arise. I constantly, when I'm doing one-to-ones with new committee members, I'm saying, would you feel comfortable to go to someone else if we ever had conflict? And they always say the same thing: I don't think that'll ever happen. And I said, but what if it did? I always say, but what if it did? Because it will happen. It's human nature. Conflict happens. And the biggest thing that I've learned about conflict, you can all write this down. I would encourage you all to write this down. As soon as you get a little inkling that something is not quite right, address it. You just have to address it. It doesn't matter how small it feels, how shitty it feels. Just sit down and say, hey, I just noticed that me and you, we had a bit of a thing there. Is everything okay? Right? And if you could do that, great. But if you can't, then hopefully someone in your organization who has, done a little bit of conflicts training and stuff like that, should be a mediator for you. And that's what I was. I was a mediator for these two comrades. They had a bit of an issue. One of them was basically using their privilege in a way that was, quite upsetting. And obviously I'm not going to go into detail about it. But I was able to like chat with that person and be like, yo, just letting you know, this is what happened. This is why this other comrade is not speaking to you at the minute, if you've not noticed. So that's why that's going on. And they were literally just like, oh God, yeah, you're right. I did do that. Oh shit. Yeah. I should say something. And then it was just a case of being like, well, don't say anything yet. Let me speak to this other person, see what they say. And then I went back to him and I said, look, they don't want an apology. They're fine with you just knowing that is what's happened. And it's just something to be mindful of going forward. And that's as easy as it is, And I'm not saying that there's not going to be any other conflicts after that, because you don't know, like things happen, like people are people, right? But it's a really important thing to just understand how actually like easy it is to just be a real person about it. I was speaking to another comrade who was basically like saying something to me that was quite, pertinent as well about it, which is like, well, if you're a leftist guy who counts himself as a feminist, it should be very easy for you to just have a little chat with a guy who's being a bit misogynist and just going, yo, I don't know if you should like do that, right? It's really easy to just like actually have that conversation. And it is like, I've had that conversation with a few of my friends who are guys, and if you're scared that they're going to like turn around and go, well, this is shit, and I don't think I'm a misogynist. I think you're being a woke snowflake or whatever they turn around and end up saying, like this thing that you're scared of. I guarantee you, it's far less harmful and damaging than allowing that shit to fester and become an issue in your organization, where the women
1,000%.
and the non-men in your organization feel uncomfortable and unsafe and they don't want to organize with you. So, that's the thing that I would say. So I did a bit of conflict resolution. That was really good. I was doing a lot of organizing. I wasn't. I always hesitate to say I did this because we did this, the union. I was involved in organising the all members meeting that we had on Saturday. It was really, really nice. We had it in a beautiful place in Moss Side. The chair of Moss Side has got like run of this cafe that's really, really nice, and she obviously like hosted us there. We had food, tea, biscuits, all that stuff, and like a great presentation from all the branches and everything. And it was really, really good. It was really, really nice to like see it all come together. This is the first all members meeting that we had since me and the new secretary were elected. So it felt quite big for us because, it's the first time that me and them have literally led on this kind of a thing. So it was really good to just see it like it pulled off without a hitch. No one said anything insane. I don't know if I ever told anyone about this situation where there was an AMM, one of the first ones that I co-chaired with people because we didn't have a chair, and this member started going on about like globalists and all this kind of stuff. It was problematic.
I remember that.
Yeah. So there was none of that. That didn't happen. So that was really good. But yeah, no. So it went off without a hitch, and it was fantastic. So that felt very, very good. Right. So yeah, that's that. It's been good. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Let me tell you then about our based viewer this week.
I'd love to hear it.
We've got a write-in. Here is the text we've been sent. Hi there, long-time listener here, finally bringing something based to the podcast. I'll keep my name private for this. I go by she, her, I'm trans, and I'm from Serbia. A couple of trans friends and I had this idea of organizing our local trans people for a while now, since there isn't really a trans community in Serbia, or even a wider queer community while we're at it. About 3 to 4 months ago, we started gathering all the trans people we know and building a collective. Our main goal is DIY HRT. There's a DIY HRT network, which we've already set up. We've also started doing mutual aid, but most importantly, we're finally getting a sense of community in our own backyard. People are hanging out all the time. Lots of new friendships were born out of this. Hopes are high and our momentum keeps rising. By having this community here, we're directly tackling loneliness and isolation that trans people already face. There's about 50 of us there so far. Way beyond our initial expectations. We're anarchist in principle and using this space to educate and radicalize our friends and comrades so we can build parallel systems of hormone distribution and make living as a trans person in Serbia easier, especially in cases where it would otherwise be impossible. We also started doing workshops where we discussed topics about organizing, leftist theory, and anything that might come up as important as we're building up this collective. The workshops have been really productive so far, and a few of our core decisions were directly inspired by Red Planet. Thank you, everyone from the Red Planet team, for inspiring me and giving me the tools needed to organize. We hope to stay in touch whenever something big and based comes up in our circles. I am blown away. Thank you so much for the submission. Honestly, heartwarming.
It's
Wow.
wonderful. It's
That's
wonderful.
so beautiful.
I genuinely don't have words. It's like there's only so much that you could do to really like describe the feeling that like you're empowering people. Do you know what I mean? And it's quite weird. Like obviously when you're like sat there having a one-on-one in real life with a tenant to empower them, that's one thing. But then hearing something like this is like, thank you so much for telling us this. And great work. Great work.
Keep
Truly
it up. Incredible. And before I remind people about the based viewer section, I want to add on to the based viewer section. I was going to say in my base stuff I did this week, I think it fits better here. I went to the screening of Alexis de Loomis's Bel Kasiba. We interviewed Alexis a little while ago. If you'll remember, great interview. If you haven't seen it or you haven't heard it, go back and listen to that one. Bel Kasiba is about Alexis's experiences shooting ISIS to death. It's fucking sick as hell. It's a great movie, and it's also about the Syrian, the revolution of the autonomous administration of northeastern Syria and their struggle towards socialism. It's really good. I went to a screening of that as part of the London Anarchist Book Fair. No, wait. The London Anarchist Book Fair had a leftist social implosion, and they all fractured, and then a new group who are now called the Anarchist Book Fair in London. Right, that's it. It was the Anarchist Book Fair in London screening I went to. Sorry.
I love leftist organizations.
Leftist is so good.
It's so good.
It was a great screening, but it was in a little crowded, tiny centre called the Lark, if anyone in London knows it. Very small. But the Kurdish Cultural Centre, the KCC, will be having a screening of it next Sunday. Let me just double check that. It is the 20th. So next Sunday, if you are in London and can make it to the Kurdish Cultural Centre for the screening of Bel Kasibe, you will get to meet Alexis in person. And I promised him that I would shout out to everyone I can. And I mean, what's better place than on Red Planet to say that? So we want to know what based things you've been doing. You can message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that. And we may shout it out in a later episode, such as this based viewer we've just read out from today. So if you'd like me to stumble through a description of what you've done and then get really a bit tearful at the end, write us in. Mule, why don't you tell us about the first news piece? We've got a few things about Israel today, but this one, it's a pretty horrible way to start, telling me about the Jabalia refugee camp.
Yeah, it's best to get stuff like this out the way, I think, as always. Israel is openly exterminating Chazans in Jabalia refugee camp. So Israel's intensified attempt at exterminating the entire population of Gaza comes after a collection of coordinated assaults consisting of missiles, drones, and rocket attacks from Iran, Yemen, Gaza, Jordan, Lebanon. The Electronic Intifada reports that while the Israeli military have recently retreated from Rafah after multiple attacks and the necessity for more troops for a ground invasion in Lebanon, the occupation's genocidal intent has intensified in the northern part of Gaza, specifically Jabalia refugee camp. Footage has emerged of Israeli quadcopters, a kind of hovering drone, the kind that you would, use to film stuff, capable of firing weapons, firing indiscriminately at Palestinians outside a hospital on a street in Deir al-Balah, described in a report by Hind Cowdery, reporting for Al Jazeera there, that even when refugees are trying to leave the camp to seek shelter elsewhere, the quadcopters are shooting at them indiscriminately still, and the IOF infantry are also targeting them in the same way as they do. Al Jazeera also reports that the current plan from Israel is to completely empty northern Gaza. That's a quote from someone in the Knesset. You'll have to forgive me, I can't remember who it is, but if you do read that story by Al Jazeera, you'll find it for sure. And you don't have to be an expert in geopolitics at this point to know what that means. This is
Mm-hmm.
all the while tensions are escalating between Iran and Israel. Russia has even hinted that it may support Iran in any upcoming war
Oh,
with
fucking
Israel.
Christ.
So it's really cool that our Western leaders are just letting this get out of fucking control.
Yeah.
You know, so obviously I want to hear your thoughts on this, but just before I hand it over to you, it's so like when you look at history books and you even like thinking about how Hitler like ended up doing what he did, right? It's this kind of similar thing. It's a politics of appeasement, right? They're trying to appease Netanyahu. So, Biden is like phoning him and saying like, I don't think you should be doing this, Jack. Maybe calm down. Don't shoot the peacekeepers. But like, BB's just like, yeah, okay, bro. And then like puts the phone down and just shoots everyone. Like
Yep.
just fucking like bombing refugee
Yep.
camps, openly calling for the genocide of Palestinians, and it's this it's not even necessarily a policy of appeasement because like, I mean, I guess you could argue it's similar because, the reason that the Allies wanted Hitler to, do his shit was because it was a buffer against communism. I guess you could argue that the reason that, the Western imperialists now want to do this, let BB do his thing, is because they don't want people in the Middle East to be independent. They don't want people
Yeah.
to have,
Yeah.
their rights and stuff. But
Yeah.
so
There's a massive imperialist incentive here. I mean, it just comes down to profit, right? Like it again and again. I was just reading today about the Ben Gurion Canal plan to put in Israel's like alternative to the Suez Canal, so that Egypt doesn't have any control. Other countries like outside of the Western imperialist order don't have any control over international shipping. Obviously, like last show, we talked a little bit about the longshoreman strike. Like shipping is a huge deal. It massively affects the economy because the economy is imperialist. It relies on the extraction of value, and that means commodities, that means materials, it means manufacturing, all of this stuff. Yeah, but even besides that, like there's oil, right? There's control over oil. There's control over just parts of the region, and it's just like I think we're just seeing this like it's like capital has its foot on the gas, and like even even if the Americans were like actually trying to press on the brakes at this point, like they can't like they're it's I think appeasement is correct, and at the same time like it's tricky to find the words because it's like when you're seeing anyone who is part of the neoliberal capitalist imperialist order trying to tut tut at the Israelis. It's like, yeah, but they're doing it so that you can get richer, so that we can all share in imperialist spoils, right? Like, you know why this is, and Russia's saying they're gonna back Iran. Yeah, big surprise, because stopping Israel would destabilize America's hegemonic control over fossil fuels, which would completely collapse their empire. If Israel falls, America falls. Like people have been saying this, it's true. It's a true thing to say. If Israel falls, America falls, and like yeah, we just yeah, I don't know. Like it's horrible seeing states do just basically what states do because they're these things, right? They're bigger than people. They're not like they don't have thoughts, right? They don't have like they act like living things, but they don't have a mind per se. So they just follow these almost deterministic paths sometimes. And it's like, yeah, it's in Russia's interest to try and destabilize American hegemony. China has been hosting talks to try and like bring together Palestinian resistance against Israel. Like it's in the interest of everyone in the imperial periphery, the largest powers in what people call the third world or whatever, outside of the imperialist order, to try to destabilize the empire and bring it down. It's in the interest of life on Earth as well. But
yeah, well
like,
that's it, right? We are nature defending itself. It's exactly
right,
like
right,
the book from the folks at the Zad.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all horrible, but I mean, I we all hope this isn't literally fucking World War Three, but like
yeah.
at the same time, like I don't know, it's like the moralist choice. If there was a moralist choice that could be made by the imperialist order at this point, would be like to let itself fold in the sense of
Mm,
like not supporting Israel if it comes to that, right? Like if
right.
like we were when World War One broke out, there was this long-term arms race, and all these imperial powers were just like bumping shoulders and getting angrier at each other and ready to have a fight. And then like the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was just like this spark in the powder keg, right? And like the invasion of Poland after so much appeasement, like was a similar situation where it's like the tensions already exist and you have to understand the long-term tensions are there, but it is troubling to see like big countries align themselves and say, yeah, we'll be on this side if shit goes down. It's just like,
Mm,
well, we already know what side America's on if shit goes down, but
yeah.
if
Yeah,
that
we'll
happens,
talk.
we all just have to do everything we can to bring America, like bring the American imperialist order down from the inside, because this
Yep.
is omnicidal. Like it's just pointing towards the death of like life on Earth. But we
Yep.
we will stop it. But I'm just
We
saying
will.
it's like it's all like all gas, no brakes toward the cliff, right?
Yep. For real. With that out of the way, and I think it
Yep.
was good to get that out of the way early.
Yep.
So tell us about some really, really fucking cool, inspiring shit.
Yeah, yeah, this rules. Okay, so a few weeks ago on the show, my most based thing was that my girlfriend and I had gone down to the trans kids occupation. Trans Kids Deserve Better is this organizing group. They occupied the NHS England headquarters a little while ago. They climbed the front, they hung a banner. There were trans adults there supporting them. There were people chanting and marching and holding signs. A few weeks ago, as I said, I've already talked about it on the show. We went down to support them at the Department for Education because they were pointing out again how trans kids are let down not just in medicine. Wes Streeting, if you don't know, who's a clone scraped from the very bottom of the barrel that they made Tony Blair and then Kier Starmer out of when they were running out of goop. They kind of diluted it with some identity politics, and they made Wes Streeting, and that's why he's not quite as good. He's a bit defective. But like he's and to look at, there's some uncanny valley stuff there too. I'm really cracking you up with this one. He's a bit creepy to look at, but that's who Wes Streeting is, and he banned puberty blockers, which is obviously driven, mental health for trans youth through the floor. It's horrifying to see. It's absolutely like exterminationist policy. It's disgusting, and it is completely betraying his responsibility as health secretary to everyone in the UK, but to children as a specific group, pretty fucked, and marginalized children at that, unbelievably fucked. So that's the group. Is trans kids deserve better? We've seen them pop up a couple of times now. My girlfriend and I went down and met with some of them, hung out with them, brought them some pizza for their overnight thing when they were occupying the Department of Education, and they turned in a letter to the Minister for Education. And this week, some activists, some trans kids, got into the LGB Alliance conference, an anti-trans hate conference where a bunch of awful bigots are basically organizing together. We've seen some highlights, such as them discussing their plans for how to eradicate trans people, how to come after the rights of adult trans people in the UK, using ban on puberty blockers as the stepping stone, which we've been saying for a long time is exactly what they would try and do. Now they're trying to do it. And what else? We had Helen Joyce, who is a big old turf and can eat my shit and hair, saying, what was she saying? Art with meaning is is
Inimitable?
no. I forgot the word she used. It's abhorrent to trans ideology, is what she said, right? Which is just some full on like Minister Goebbels shit. Like it's really fucked. It's degenerate art theory. Anyway, anyway. Activists got into the LGB Alliance conference and released 6,000 crickets, which is always a beautiful form of protest you see. It's always just funny as hell when a bunch of disgusting, vile people get a biblical plague brought down upon them. just
Truly fucking
just
biblical.
delightful.
Amazing.
Yeah, you're trying to bully kids to death. A blight upon your house, I say. That's how about a little blight for you? What about that? Anyway, so that's a little pick me up for everyone. I hope you enjoyed that story. And Mule, why don't you tell us about the Spanish Prime Minister?
Why don't I? So this is quite pertinent because we're going to be talking today about neoliberal leaders of the West, and how, I don't know, I guess like whatever they do is pretty empty and it doesn't really amount to anything. But it's different from country to country, that's for sure. And I did want to just talk about Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, because he has had like quite a solid line about Israel for some time. In that recently he's joined Emmanuel Macron in a plea for countries to stop selling arms to Israel. Now, the reason why I bring up Macron, I mean, a lot of people are bringing up Macron with this story because obviously it's like, oh, look, another leader of Europe has said that we should stop doing this. Great, this is great, good for them. But there's a difference here. There's a difference between Macron and Sanchez, because Sanchez has consistently, since October 7th, doubted that Israel has been following and complying with international law and said it openly. I'm sure Spanish comrades would turn around and say, now he's rubbish with it. But you have to understand, we live in the UK, and the best that we're ever going to get is release all the hostages. So you have to remember that.
Release the sausages. I'm so hungry.
He did say sausage. He did say sausages. Not even release the hostages. Release the sausages. So that's the best that we can hope to get. So please bear with us. But it's interesting because basically the reason that Sanchez has said this is because the IOF are targeting UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. I'm sure some of you have heard about this. These are the mostly Irish peacekeepers in the UN at the moment, who are obviously Irish people have a certain solidarity with Palestinians, and that's not to make a blanket statement about all Irish people. A lot of my Irish comrades talk about how racist some Irish people are and can be, and that's completely understandable. But it's quite a
yeah. Let's not racially profile Irish people here by saying that they're all based and all really cool and all have international solidarity. That's
absolutely
not okay. You can't stereotype them like that.
You literally can't. You will get cancelled, rightfully so. So I think that it is quite meaningful in that they are mostly Irish troops, and it is Israel, and Israel. There's this history of solidarity, at least with a lot of Irish people in the north, anyway. And I think that that's the reason that he said this actually now, is because the IOF are actually targeting UN peacekeepers, and it's they're fighting white guys now. So I am obviously very cynical about this in general, but it is important to mention that he has been quite consistent as far as I could see when I did a little research about this earlier today. But it's one of those things. It's like Israel have withdrawn their ambassador from Spain after the PM said openly that he doubts that Israel is complying with international law. And that's all fine for the Spanish PM. But then obviously, we've got Macron, who has said the same thing this week. But actually, the ties that France has to the arms trade going to Israel have simply not stopped. They've simply not relinquished in any way. So it's all well and good. Neoliberal fascist Macron sat there going, please actually don't sell any arms to Israel anymore. Please, it would be really good if everybody stopped doing that. And just
I think Israel has gone a little far with no, please, no.
Literally. And I think that it's all well and good him saying that, but he's actually not enforcing any of this. So it's quite an interesting sort of difference in how easy it is actually to say words. It's extremely easy to say words, but to actually do any action is it's something else, isn't it? Obviously, like I say, it is important to remain critical of leaders in the West, despite their big words, as of course it's too little too late anyway. Even if I didn't do too much research into whether Spain is doing loads of arms exports to Israel. I'm sure there are companies in Spain that are doing that. But at the end of the day, even if they did shut down all arms trade to Israel, it would still be too little too late. At the end of the day, this should have happened months ago or a year ago. It's just such a piss take when it comes to this kind of stuff. I guess the reason that I wanted to talk about this today is because it is, even though they're words, they do kind of have an effect on the broader, I guess, political consensus, in that if all of the Western leaders of the world are saying the same thing, then at least it's going to have some kind of an impact on how people discuss these things at a electoral politics level, essentially. It's going to have a bit of an impact. Not a massive impact, but I think it's just important to observe and see the difference between that and actual direct action like Palestine Action are doing on the daily. But anyway, let's talk about some more direct action. So, what about these dock workers?
Absolutely. So, people who are good at holding facts and information in their minds for a long time will remember that last show we talked about the ILA dock workers, that's the International Longshoremen's Association, and how they were about to go on strike on October 1st, on a strike that was going to cost the economy, the US economy, $50 billion a day, like crazy numbers, because they have 47,000 members across the whole of the East Coast. They control half the shipping that happens to the US. And yeah, they're just not happy with their employer, US Maritime Authority, USMX. Were basically fucking them around in negotiations, not giving them everything they deserve, which if you read about the story, it's great. It's just really entertaining because it's like what they're asking for is a massive raise, like a massive raise by anyone's standards. And that's fucking based. Like it's gotten to a point now where the last offer from the USMX was a 50% pay increase. And they're like, no, that's not good enough. Because it's not good enough because workers are the ones who make everything fucking happen. So the strike happened. There have been claims, but they sound like some cope to me that it didn't damage the economy. There have been other claims that the 3 day strike, claims from Americans, no, it didn't hurt our economy at all. Our economy is fine. Please don't pull your stocks out. Claims by European shipping controllers saying the backlog of vessels will take months to completely resolve from just a 3 day strike. So after 3 days, it's gone back to negotiations. USMX obviously have their tail between their legs. They are offering a 60% wage increase now, but the ILA has at time of recording, their last demand was 77%. So they may well still keep pushing. They want protections against automation as well. Harold Daggett, head of the ILA, demanded companies agree to boost hourly pay by $5 for each year of the contract. The ILA has postponed further strikes until January in a gesture of goodwill during the elections and holiday season. I think that showing goodwill, right, to the enemy, the ruling class, is something we could criticize. But here I just want to say, like, their strike was already so powerful, right? And they haven't said, all right, we won't. They've said, we'll hold off during these really critical like periods. And then if you fuck us around after we've been generous with that, we will come back way harder, which must be terrifying to to these business lobbies. So Genocide Joe, the president of the dying empire, was quoted saying, "Who am I? I want to go back to bed." And then when he was given a shot of the most powerful steroids known to man, he followed up with an applause for the tentative agreement. In a statement on Thursday evening, it said, it represents critical progress toward a strong contract. I congratulate the dock workers from the ILA who deserve a strong contract after sacrificing so much to keep our ports open during the pandemic, Biden said. And I applaud the port operators and carriers who are members of the US Maritime Alliance. It was US Maritime Alliance, not Authority, for working hard and putting a strong offer on the table. Biden noted the need for ports to be open to, quote, ensure the availability of critical supplies for those hit by Hurricane Helena, which has left more than 200 people dead in the US Southeast. So it is possible there has been some White House intervention here. We were talking about this last time we covered the story that Genocide Joe was keen to keep business as usual going. Of course he is, that's his job. But yeah, uncritical, vital support to the ILA and the dock workers and the international workers of the world. All the power to all the people, and I hope they get the raise that they want. And I hope that everyone who was relying on them to not strike is quaking in their boots and has realized just how powerful the workers are.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this, Mule?
Yeah, I think that like I've seen a lot of people criticize the unions for saying, oh, we support the troops and we're going to be letting weapon shipments go through and shit like that, and I think that that is definitely like a valid criticism. And again, it's like at the end of the day, what you have to ask yourself is, you know, if you're willing to see these problems and you're willing to criticize them, then what are you doing about them? Is what I would say. Like in the union when I joined GMTU, there were problems. There were lots of problems. Like for example, the trans people, queer people weren't really like openly joining the union, and it's because there wasn't representation. There wasn't like a caucus and shit like that. So I joined that union and I founded the fucking queer caucus, right? And I'm not saying it's that easy. But what I am saying is you have to think about like what is it that you could do where you are to affect that, right? And if you live in one of these places where there are lots of dock workers and maybe you have a job in that industry, then maybe it's time to sort of use your voice within that union to ask for change for that, right? Do you know what I mean? I think that like when we're talking about the sort of broader benefits of this, like you said, like it made everyone who should be scared of the workers. And that's a huge thing. It's absolutely massive. And yeah,
Yeah.
if they're fucking letting weapons shipments through, then that's fucked and it's shit and
Yeah.
it really sucks. Um,
Well,
Things can be good and bad, and
yeah.
such as the nature of life.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There you go. There is our critical support, right? That is the concept of critical support. Is to be able to criticize people and also support them when they are part of the same struggle as you, and we are all part of the same struggle against the ruling class, the absolutely like, nihilistic, world-ending ruling class that wants to see, everything on the planet wiped out so they can make the highest profit. Um, I think that this is fresh in my mind because of watching Belkacemi yesterday, but like democracy is made possible by as much power being in the hands of as many people as possible, right? And and so one thing Alexis covers, he's like, all right, so in the autonomous administration, there are these councils, and so each living area, maybe it's a street, maybe it's a block, is deemed a commune, and they might not be living fully as a commune and sharing everything, but they're deemed a commune, and then they have a council that they can be part of, and then their councils are also part of council and so on, right? And it's trying to democratize things as much as possible. And when he was there in 2017, he says in the film, he saw that it was really received in the way that like local councils are under capitalism, which is like this is a complaints desk, this is a place where you can go and get updates on what the local politics are and very little else. And you're going to sit there like an audience and you're going to listen to what they have to say and then go home. And when he came back in 2020, 2021, um, it was different because people were actually like debating with the council members. They understood that they had like a meaningful voice, and it takes time for that to happen, right? But like, I don't think that 47,000 dock workers would vote all together to like in a world where they were using their power to the fullest of its extent. I don't think they would use that power to enable America's genocide in Palestine, right? I think that they would do differently because I think that people just can't conscience that shit, right? Like, so I think that more power to the workers, all the power to all the people, like it will result, even if it takes time, in opposition to that kind of shit. So I see it as a move in the right direction on that specific principle, even if they are, currently saying cringe shit like support our troops. Over time, they
Yeah.
will not.
Yeah, this is exactly it. It's about patience, and it is. And I do want to say that I don't think it's good to try and shut down criticism of that stuff. But like, I have seen it like just too much on the internet, and it really is like I'm so annoyed that I had a video that did well this week, a couple of weeks ago, because I've just been online and seen this stuff, and I wouldn't have seen it, and I wouldn't be bothered about it if if I hadn't have been on the internet. So it's kind of like I'm sat there and I'm like, you know what? I think it's really good to actually like be aware of that and criticize that. But I have just seen some people making it all about that. And it really is just like, just do a bit of material analysis when you're doing this stuff. Like, put your energy into something else, log off. So yeah, that's my only real thing about it. But yeah, I think it's really good, and I think that the more and more that people see that they can have power, the more and more they will demonstrate their power, which is of course
Yeah,
important.
100%.
Um,
Do you want to
yeah.
tell us about some people demonstrating some power? I gave you a tenants union story because I thought you'd quite enjoy a little
You
tenants union story.
better believe it. Yeah, I remember. I think I saw this, and I put it into the Red Planet chat. So I really appreciate you fucking writing this up because I can't believe I forgot to not write this, forgot to write this up when I was doing my stories. This is great. Missouri tenants unions go on rent strike. Tenant Union Federation says more to come. So I think we've mentioned this before on the show, Sophie, about the Tenant Union
Yeah,
Federation. Yep.
national US tenant union, the tenant union federation, really fucking good. Yeah.
Really, really fucking good. So the new U.S. National Tenants Union, the Tenant Union Federation, has begun coordinating a campaign against federally financed rental properties with tenants who have been let down by their landlords and the federal government. Two unions in Kansas City, Missouri, the Independence Towers Tenants Union and the Quality Hill Tenant Union, have started a rent strike, which will collectively withhold over $60,000 for every month that it goes on. That is huge. That is really fucking huge. If these, what we're constantly trying to get in the UK is situations like this. And it kind of sucks, right? Because we're quite lucky that we find it hard to get situations like this, because what it means is that there are less sort of corporate landlords, there are less massive slumlords. We still have those things. We do still have those things in this country, but it can be hard sometimes because sometimes, you might have a block of flats and there are maybe 10 flats that are all owned by the same landlord, but then there's another 20 that are owned by multiple landlords. They're different landlords. And so trying to organize something like an action which would involve basically getting everybody in the tower block to actually do something can be quite difficult. This is actually why when we had Isaac on and he was telling us about the Seven Sisters campaign, we were talking about the Seven Sisters campaign. It was really easy because they'd already self-organized, self-selected, and all GMTU had to go in there and was do like, a bit of radicalization and be like, yo, you can ask for like loads more than this. You don't have to just ask to be rehoused somewhere. You can ask for them to not knock down the towers. You can ask for them to fucking, all this kind of stuff. And, it's really, really like powerful when you get a big building with one landlord. And it's huge. It's absolutely massive. This rent strikes are really like the way to go if we're talking about the combination of worker power that would be really fucking massive and really shake capital. It really is rent strikes and strikes like the one we just previously spoke about, the dock workers strike. Like these are massive, huge things that will ultimately get us a better life. One, because it will really upset landlords and they'll start selling all the properties and then the house prices plummet and everyone can afford a home. Or we get to the utopia section of the humanity experience and everyone can just have a house. And then obviously the trade union strikes where big companies are shitting themselves and workers are the means of production. So, it's fantastic. And the unions have received support from across the states with solidarity messages from other tenants unions. And at the same time, other unions are prepared to go on strike as well in North and South Carolina, Michigan, Montana, Kentucky, Illinois, and more. I think a really important thing to note about all these areas is that they are not traditionally the metropolitan centers of America. They're not New York. They're not LA. They're not, Florida. They're not Miami, Orlando, right? Even though those places have had rent strikes and they do have tenant unions, these that are selectively throwing this in are in some really poor places. Kansas City is not exactly like, the biggest, metropolitan center in the States.
To me, this is the proof of concept for the TUF. I think that this is just like the tenant union federation works, right? Is like, if it, even if this campaign doesn't like succeed in winning its goals, which is a big if in my opinion, because a rent strike is huge. Coordinated rent strikes are fucking huge, right? But like just being able to organize at all to get to the stage that people are actually rent striking, and it's going to happen across multiple states simultaneously, right? To pressure the federal government directly. It's just like, okay, the TUF is it, right? The TUF has got has got the structure that like people need to see. I think that to me that's just huge.
Yeah, and I think it is worth mentioning as well because like this is not just like a US thing. It is actually an international thing, and I can say that with certainty because GMTU is involved in trying to coordinate an internationalist tenants union committee, which is extremely based. One of our political officers sent me an email about it that I'm so excited to read tomorrow morning, and they're talking about like the fundamental characteristics of what the internationalist tenants union should be. It is really exciting, just sort of like understanding because it was always very difficult for me. Like when I'm talking about GMTU stuff, and people would be saying like when I used to stream all the time, it would be like, oh, well, I'm in the States and things are really different and hard here in the States, and I'd be like, yeah, I know, I don't know anything about it. But now because I know this big like collection of tenants unions, like the other day, someone that I know in Portland was like, oh, I'm think I might lose my fucking home, and I was like, Portland Tenants Union. Let's just Google that, see what comes up, and straight away it's like all these resources on the Portland Tenant. I think it's Portland Tenant Organizing. I can't remember the exact organization's name, but all these resources about like what to do if you're getting evicted, what to do if you're getting a rent increase, what to do if you can't afford your rent, what to do, who to talk to, etc., etc. Loads and loads of good stuff. If you're a tenant in the US or wherever you are in the world, please, please, please join a tenants union. Oh my god. So absolutely incredible
Yeah.
news. Soph, I don't know if you have any more on this or you want to tell us about the next news story.
I think you've said it. I think we've both said what we have to say on this one. So I'm going to tell you about one more Palestine story. This one is about resistance elsewhere in the world. So as the world mourns a year of Palestinian genocide, London sees an enormous pro-Palestine march, and Palestine Action uncover documents indicating collusion between the arms industry and the criminal justice system. So I'm going to start with this Palestine Action thing directly. I'm going to read from their tweet. Breaking documents reveal internal meetings and collusion between government ministers, the Attorney General's office, police, the Crown Prosecution Service, and Israeli weapons producer Elbit Systems. This is a violation of the obligated independence of the judicial system. So they've got a picture here of a document that is talking about objective, reassure Martin Fawcett that the Criminal Protest Act against Elbit Systems UK are taken seriously by the government, right? Like this is what we've been observing from the outside, where we've been able to see from the outside that the Crown Prosecution Service, which by the way, Kier Starmer was director of, related to our topic today, where we've been able to see that the UK justice system has been cracking down way harder on Palestine protesters. This is evidence of it being a deliberate plan that has been discussed in words, right? Like when we're saying we can see they're treating them differently, they would be able to dodge around that if it's just that it's just how they roll because they're a bunch of right-wing shitheads. They have actually colluded to do this. That's a violation of like their legal responsibility, right? They are not supposed to be like on the side of that. They're not supposed to be working for a business, and they are directly colluding with Elbit Systems for the approval of America, for the approval of again the imperialist system. So it's pretty huge to see that Palestine Action's got their hands on that. I think part of that is probably that they've just made such a name for themselves that everyone like is becoming more aware of Palestine Action as the place to go to if you have something that you can use to like help fuck up the machine from the inside, which is incredible. I wouldn't be that surprised if they had some ability to, if they had some capacity that they've used to like, get in and get the stuff. But my guess would be someone's been able to just someone who with a conscience who has access to that information has just gone, fuck it, I'm giving this to Palestine Action. Yeah, and the other part of the story I was going to say, as I said last week, it was a year of the genocide. Mule, I think you went to. There was a march in Manchester as well, right?
I couldn't make it because I had to work, which is the awful, way that capitalism forces you to not take part in revolutionary action. But one thing that did happen, I would say this actually, this was going to be the cold open if Sophie hadn't have told her amazing joke about a Nazi falling off a Nazi mountain.
Surprised
But
that smile on
actually,
everyone's face, you know?
no, no, it did. It really did. It was really, really good. Um, but basically, I went to the Workers' Day of Action for Palestine. So right after work finished this week, I ran over to St. Peter's Square and was there with a bunch of different organizations, Unison, UCU, lots of different representations, the Trade Union Congress. I think the chairman or the speaker of the Trade Union Congress was there. He did a bit, and there was a guy there. I can't remember his name, but he was from rebuilding Gaza, and there was another. I can't remember. There was another person there that was from a really good migrant refugee organization. So just like a big collaboration of really, really cool, awesome people. There'd have been people who'd done strikes to demand action for Palestine. You know, the bosses are saying, "Why are you striking?" And it's like, our government isn't doing anything about Palestine. Use your power to, do something about it. Essentially, so it was a good day, and I joined the sort of like the end of the day kind of thing. The funny thing about it is that for weeks now, one of my comrades from the union, Michael, has been saying that he's got our cloth banner, which is a beautiful Greater Manchester Tenants Union traditional trade union banner. You know, you hold it up with two people and it's massive. And Isaac's mum actually weaved it for us, which is really cute. And it's a beautiful banner. And Michael was convinced that he had it, and I was like, okay, don't worry, bro, I'll be there. We'll hold it together. It'll be really cool. I'm running over from work now, so I ran over there, and I'm trying to find him, and then I find him, and I'm like, oh, where is it? Okay, let's get it out. Let's get it out. And he starts opening this thing, and I'm just going to do this to prove to you that I'm not talking shit. It was. You can just hear it. If you're on the podcast, you can just hear it. But this is a packaged yellow thing. And I looked at it, and the first thing that I thought was, Isaac's mum didn't put the cloth banner in a package. And even if she did, we've had it for a year, and it wouldn't be around now. So what's this? And actually what it is a selection of about 7 or 8 gazebos. And so this is actually a moment here where I
No.
hope in whatever small chance there is out there that the person who did this is listening to this show. If you attended the Durham Miners Gala in 2024 and you gave ginger, crusty tenants union activist a bag with stuff in it that you thought was a cloth banner and you've lost some gazebos, please get in touch with Greater Manchester Tenants Union, info@tenantsunion.org.uk, because we have them now and we can give them back to you if you want. But anyway, it was just a bunch of gazebos, and now I've got a bunch of gazebos at my house. So, but anyway, we did go to the International Workers' Day of Action for Palestine, and it was really good. There were some really good speakers. I think the thing to remember about organizing as well, like just like a bit of a, I guess, like advice for people who are going to go to these things, like there are going to be some things that are going to make you go ooh, because that's just the nature of organizing with people in IRL. Like I cannot stress like just how much work needs to be done. In my latest video, I actually make a plea saying this is why we need more people who are like very critical on the internet to log off and go outside, because actually a lot of people are really critical about really important things like racism in organizing, co-opting of movements, queerphobia, etc. And there needs to be pushback against this stuff. So, there are people there who are trying to sell their papers, not mentioning any names, and shit like that. So, there is going to be stuff like that there, but it is still important to go to these things because you have to show the people there that you know what they're about and you're there in solidarity and you're not there to buy their fucking papers, basically.
Okay, so I wanted to chat a bit more about the protest. It was 300,000 people. The news have been downplaying numbers throughout the protests for Palestine, right? So, I mean, the source I've got here is The Guardian saying tens of thousands joined pro-Palestinian protests in London, which is ridiculous. Like, it's just a thing you get a sense for going to lots of protests, right? Like, you start to, like, okay, if you're looking at images online, you could be looking at a crowded square and you could believe that's the whole protest. And you'd be like, yeah, okay, tens of thousands of people, that's pretty big. But when the reality is it's hundreds of thousands of people, that is them deliberately downplaying it, right? Like they're they're trying to, right, and it's sneaky as well, right, because it's like hundreds of thousands of people is a number of tens of thousands of people, right? How many tens of thousands? 30, in fact, right? 30 tens of thousands of people, but there's a word for that. It's 300,000 people. um I just wanted to speak on my experience of the protest a little bit because of this misrepresentation, right? I've got another source to kind of compound that point as well, which is actually from last year. There was there was a uh, there was an NPR coverage of the protest that happened last year when all this was fresh, right? Um, London's Metropolitan Police put the number of protesters over 300,000, while organisers say it could have been one of the largest protests in British political history, suggesting 800,000 people took part in the march, right? That was last year when this stuff was fresh. This one that's just happened is easily the biggest march there's been for Palestine since the original wave. There were weekly massive protests. I went to some of them. There were like some bits where like there was some genuine crowd crush. It was like alarmingly packed. Like it was, some of the biggest protests I've ever seen easily. Um, and as they're saying in the NPR article there, right, like the Met Police said 300,000, and it was probably close to a million people, right? Last year. This year, you got the Guardian saying tens of thousands, but yeah. So okay, so we arrived there. It was at an absolute standstill, right? Which is like, that's one of the things I think you can gauge if you know your city. You understand how foot traffic moves through it. If you've been to a few marches, you know how foot traffic moves through like the biggest streets, the ones that are most popular for marches to go down. And like, I'll just say, for there to be a complete standstill in a march that has already started and is like technically an hour in, at the part that I was at, I was just like, okay, this is huge. Like, this is a big fucking deal. It was like half an hour later, we like looped around to catch up with some comrades, wound up back in the same spot, and it was still moving super slowly. Again, like it was such an enormous march. There was some shit from the cops. I won't go hugely into it. It feels like they were targeting um, organizers and known groups, because there was, ahead of this, there was a big thing put out, but on Instagram, that was like all the groups that would be marching as part of it. You had like everyone from like LGSM, Sisters Uncut, Dyke Project, to like Workers for a Free Palestine. It was, if you're on Instagram and you've been following any of the stuff to do with London, you will have seen this image. It is just like every leftist org,
It's like it's
like
like a
on a
100 or
massive,
50 or
it's
it's
huge. It's
massive. Yeah.
absolutely enormous. Yeah. And they had basically congregated in one spot to march together as a point of this, like, of their solidarity for Palestine. And there was like some very deliberate, very coordinated police activity that was like not responding to anything. And I saw the police like form into a crowd and then deliberately push through a part of the crowd that they had no reason to, and then start grabbing people, and they made a bunch of arrests there. Um, um, yeah,
I think
not going
it's
into
yeah.
in not going to go way more into it, because it's part of my based stuff I've been up to, but the details would not be good to share. Um, but like, I do think that in doing that, they're going after like the known leftist orgs and trying to shut down, detain, discourage, gather information on like people who are in known leftist orgs there.
Yeah, and I think that an important thing to remember about that is that I think while it's scary, of course it's scary. I think we have to be realistic about this stuff, especially to people who we might be speaking to, who maybe aren't used to, doing stuff outside or whatever, or like doing any direct action or marching. Yeah, it does sound scary, and it is scary, especially if you're not a privileged person, if you're not like a cisgender white man, it's always scary, the cops being around.
Yeah,
And I think that like what's important to remember is that the cops are doing this stuff actually out of desperation nowadays,
yeah,
because they're there to protect and serve capital. They're there to protect and serve the imperial forces. They're there to stop any kind of revolutionary activity. And the thing is that if they're desperately trying to arrest union leaders, organization leaders, and shit like that, for a start, they're going to find it hard to charge them with stuff. Secondly, it's desperation in that like they think that they can kill the movement in any way that matters, whereas historically, that is just not the case. Like you cannot kill us in any way that matters. The revolution will simply continue to happen, and it's too late now. It's too late for Israel. I think that all of the different publications that report on Israel and its fascism and genocide over the years, Electronic Intifada, Mondo Vice, there's some other places that do some really good stuff. Al Jazeera as well. They've all been doing these really important think pieces on how it's the end of Israel. Really, it's the beginning of the end. It's way too late now. The entire world has seen way too much, it is again. It's always emotional talking about this stuff, but I think it is important to remember that the Palestinians have suffered so much, and it is such a late stage in the game, but it is still good. It is still good to see that actually the world has responded in this way, and people are doing constant direct actions all over the world. They're happening all over the place. Like if I constantly try and imagine in my head that map. I don't know if anyone's seen this video on YouTube, but it's like a graphic map of all the nuclear explosions detonated all over the world since 1937 or something like that, and it keeps popping up and but I try and imagine that, but direct action that's happening now against Israel. And it actually is oh, that gives me a bit of serotonin actually. I'm going to keep thinking about that because it is what's happening. If you think about the way that there are groups that we don't hear about in the imperial periphery who are doing loads of stuff, the Houthis, we hear about some stuff that they're doing, but not everything.
Hey, babe. Hey. Trans DIY HRT network in Serbia. Fuck.
Right?
That wouldn't have press if they weren't writing into us that they were that they were a fan of our show.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. My point exactly.
Yeah. Right. So what else happened? I will say yes. If you're a revolutionary and you have an abolitionist stance against you believe ACAB, right? You know all cops are bastards, right? And they exist to serve capital. It's just okay, so they're targeting leftist groups. Okay, well, of course they are, right? That's literally their job. And it's I'm not going to disagree with you. That is literally their job. But also, it is not what their job is as written, right? The way they're supposed to police a protest is not supposed to be to just run in and try and grab people from leftist orgs. That is actually fucked. Morally as well as but as well as against what they're actually supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to protest stuff, right? Police, how they're supposed to manage protests. Anyway, overall, good protest, had a great time. There were a lot of people really mad at Kier Starmer. We will get to some of Starmer's support for Israel shortly. It was delightful that no one could spell his silly name. I think we should just go back to calling him Keith. Yep. I think people have an easier time with it. There was someone I saw with a sign that was 1 year too long was their sign, right? And I think everyone who I spoke to who'd also seen the sign was 1 year? What? No.
Yeah, make it 100 actually. Yeah.
It's quite a lot longer than one actually. But it was still good. There were people there. There was. I want to air a frustration. You've inspired me with your call out to the anonymous gazebo person.
All
right. There was someone who is at a lot of things who has not a marching band. No, if I say marching band, that will sound like a brass band, right? But a music group who march and then they do the chants, but put to music and make it funky, to make people really riled up and lively. And it was cool to be marching in front of them until we got involved, until the police got shitty with the crowd, and then the police formed a line and people were chanting, let them go after people had been grabbed. And the guy who has the mic and the band came over with his loudspeaker and was yelling at people, standing with his back to the cops, basically in line with them, yelling at people to get back to the march and move on. I'm just gonna say, fucking cringe, bro.
Yeah,
if you ever see this, fucking cringe.
Cringe.
We had 300,000 people, and you had a sound system. You could have got people to easily. Anyway, that's all. That
Yeah.
was cringe.
No, I think
I'm just
that's really
saying. I'm just
important.
saying that was
It is really
cringe.
important to call that shit out. You know what I mean? Like not understanding the power that you have, not measuring it. I mean, it can come as a result of not being involved in something that is structural or whatever. Maybe not having communication between people who are organizing the march and the organization that you're in, and et cetera, et cetera. I understand that there are issues with stuff like that, but I think that it is very obvious if you're in a crowd of 300,000 people, like you said, like as soon as you said, oh, we had
Yeah.
to stop at a point in the process, I was like, yeah, I remember when that happened in Manchester on a march. Like, there's a point where we stopped on Market Street and it was like,
Yeah.
okay, this is surreal. It shouldn't be taking this long. And it's
Yeah.
because there were so many people there. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you just know there's a moment that like switches in your brain and you go, oh,
Yeah.
this is powerful actually.
Yeah.
And then you realize what power you actually have. So yeah, no, I think it's important.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's important. Sort your neck out.
Absolutely. Because as well, like these were just to speak to that phenomena one more time. I know we've already touched on it a couple of times, but whatever. It's a Mule Sophie show. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
It's like those are streets around where I went to uni, right? I've been on the streets a lot, and like, I've been there when it's fucking 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, and there's like it's a massive wide 4-lane street or whatever, but I'm the only person I can see in either direction, or like there are 5 people on the whole of this massive highway or whatever. And like by contrast to be in a standstill crowd there, it just does a thing, like you say, to your brain. You're just like, oh, the number of people that would need to be here for it to be this full that we can't move, they can't stop us.
Yeah.
Like,
They simply
you
can't.
know,
There's no way.
and that's the
Yeah.
thing. We need to have a popular understanding that a demonstration is there to demonstrate something.
Yeah.
you know. Anyway,
For real.
cool protest. One of my favorite brackets and cringe signs was there was someone who had this really wordy sign. They put loads of little text snippets all over it, and this picture of a horse, right? And they said it was like the martyr horse, and they were talking about how Israel had shot a horse that was pulling a flower cart, and it was like that's true, and it is fucked up that Israel did that, and they are awful, and it is bad that they would just shoot an animal, but also like they've also shot like 40,000 people and
Yep.
bombed them and everything.
Yep.
Like my girlfriend turned to me and she said, Netanyahu said, "I'm going to kill 40,000 Palestinians and a horse," and this person said, "Why a horse?" But
I always think that is like, again, I don't want to insult any of our audience because at this point I am like just assuming that like most of our audience like aren't really like doing a lot of stuff, but like I know that a lot of our audience are doing a lot of stuff because obviously
yeah,
we're getting people
big
writing
time.
in telling us stuff. So please don't be offended. If I'm saying this to you, like please go outside and you're already going outside. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking to the people who are watching, who might see this by chance. They might watch the VOD. They might listen to the podcast. I'm saying please go outside. But like something that you should know, those people who haven't been outside yet, is when you go to protest, like that's the beauty of protest. That's like one of
Yeah,
these beautiful things is that like people can be so creative, but like creative in like an insane way that you just don't really see that often. And it's really
yeah,
funny a lot of the time. Like for example, so the one person that you said who had the sign that was like 1 year too long. It's
yeah,
like that's like a very big signifier to me that that person has been radicalized by this whole thing. So
yes.
I'm actually quite
They're
positive
new
about
to
that.
it. Yeah,
Yes, they're still wrong, and they should
yes.
definitely like be told that they're wrong, and it's longer than that actually.
Yeah, they'll
But I
learn.
think
That's
yeah,
all right.
they'll learn. It's still inspiring, right? But it is also just like sometimes extremely funny to see like what people write on their placards.
Yeah,
I thought that this bisexual stands with Palestine was too many words. I genuinely did when I was making my sign. I was like, this is too wordy. People aren't going to get it.
yeah,
But it's literally fine. And sometimes you will find that people have done entire like video essay scripts
yeah,
like on their fucking
yeah,
placards. It's
yeah.
so
They
funny.
got 40 pages just nailed to a post, and you need to flip through all of them to see what their point is. And at the end, they're like, "We live in a system, and it has problems." And you're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I agree. You nailed it, absolutely." Um, and but yes, they were there, right? The horse person, they came to the protest. They were one of the 300,000. So good, good, good that they were there. Anything else I want to mention about it? Lots of Lebanon flags, not really any Yemen flags, which I think is just a feature of like the news has been talking about like the news dipped off talking about Palestine and started talking about Palestine again recently with the escalations, with the year of genocide, with Iran, with the attacks on Lebanon. And so, like, Lebanon's been in the news, but like attacks on Yemen by imperial core countries are just so common and constant that it's like it's just not news, basically. And if it were news, like the news media would have to spend their time explaining the whole history of Yemen like we did, and just like explain explain how fucked it is that like our countries just keep bombing Yemen over and over again and why they want to do that. And anyway, that's my personal request. I'd love to see some Yemen flags next time. Um, but there were lots of signs that did say, like, hands off of Palestine, Lebanon, and Yemen. And there was, of course, the Instagram meme I saw that morning of yeah, I'm into Triple H, and they got Triple H the wrestler, and it says Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas.
Yeah, great
um,
stuff.
and there
Quality.
was, yeah, and also there was an indigenous South American block, which was really cool. Actually, there was people with the indigenous pride flag, which was awesome. So that was, the quilt flag. People
I saw
know what I'm talking about.
pictures of that. I saw photos of
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
really cool to see that. Yeah, those are my thoughts about the protest. Just wanted to spend some time bigging up being at protests and going to big protests, and the complicated, sometimes cringe nature of it.
Oh yeah.
There you
Oh yeah. You
go.
better believe it. You better believe it. Um. Yeah. So that is the new. Fuck cops. Fucking shut up. Sorry. Just give
So
me a minute.
that was the news. So that was the news, and we just want to quickly remind you that Red Planet is a show, and it is a show made possible by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/red_planet. We'll tell you some more about the Patreon at the end of the show. Right now, it's just a good moment for you to think, oh, wow, I could be supporting Red Planet with my money, and go to patreon.com/red_planet and help us to be able to keep doing the show and make it even better and expand and do exciting stuff like the Zad documentary and other documentaries, maybe, if we're done with that one. Right, Mule, let's talk about the worst boy in the
No.
whole United Kingdom of Great
No.
Britain and Ireland.
Here comes a
Um,
big wet boy.
and and because of the class structure of the UK and how power is funneled to make the UK as bad as possible, the worst boy in the UK is also the most important special boy in the UK, and that's, of course, Prime Minister Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
That how you say it?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know which way. He's got too many special boy titles.
Yeah.
I assume he also has like a head boy pin and
He was fucking definitely a prefect.
Yeah,
1,000%.
yeah. Director
Fucking
of
hell.
Crown Prosecution Service. He was a QC, right? He's a sir. He's PM.
I want to
Yeah,
talk a little bit just about, well, first of all, the reason that me and Sophie are actually doing this episode, we actually were going to do this episode last week, but it turns out that we didn't do a show last week, so that's why we're doing
happens.
it this week. But what's really funny about that, the reason I'm mentioning it is because actually this week it's came out that he is now the lowest rated government, like the lowest rated approval rating for any prime minister since polls began.
Pretty bad.
And that's pretty fucking bad. And it just so happens that it coincided with this. I do also want to touch, I hope you don't mind me doing this, Sophie, but just like a quick sort of like history, because we were talking about, oh, he was probably head boy, he's probably prefect. But there are some things that
you got some stuff about him.
I got a little bit of stuff that I want to
Yeah.
talk about, and I think I've mentioned it to you before. I might have even mentioned it on Red Planet.
Tell me in one. I just want to say about the polls.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just looking at a tweet from at Alex Nuns that is talking about Starmer. They're quoting Bastani actually from Navarra, who's showing that the Conservatives are now in one poll, like level with Labour, and like it was July, right? It's October now. It's July. It was July that was the election where Labour won in a landslide, like literally a landslide victory, and it's turned around to this that fast. That's
it's shocking, actually.
yeah. Tell me about the boy. Come on.
So Some things that people might not know about Kier Starmer, and this will actually blow your mind. There was a lawsuit against a couple of comrades back in the day in the 90s, which was famously known as McLibel. And it was when McDonald's decided to sue two environmental activists for doing libel by putting posters everywhere about the awful way that McDonald's sources its meat and shit like that. And essentially, it was quite interesting to find out, for me personally, when I first found this out, that Keir Starmer was actually doing pro bono work to defend those two activists. This is true. You can
Oh,
see it. There's a documentary on it, and you can go and watch it. It's completely true. He was doing pro bono work for activists, and now he's putting them in jail, isn't he? That's what's
Jesus.
happening.
He defended
He's
the McLibel. He defended the activists in the McLibel case
I
for
don't
free.
know. I don't know if he stood up in court, but I know that he was doing pro bono,
Fucking hell.
organizing paperwork, building the case, stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was a time when his soul had not been hardened by the vile systems and machinations of this world, which is quite interesting. And then, of course,
Yeah.
the next sort of big thing about him was that he was QC.
Mm.
QC Starmer, and that's when he wanted to make the posting gulag, isn't it? Back in 2011, when he was
Yeah.
like, anyone who posts anything that I don't like should be put in prison. This is actually, you could just find this if you just search Keir Starmer posting gulag. It'll come up. No, it won't. Yeah, I think you have to search for it's like a Guardian interview, like a
Yeah.
Guardian columnist sort of corners him in the chambers wherever he is, Crown Court or whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, well I think that people who are posting scary things on the internet are very bad and naughty, and they should be allowed to go to jail. Actually, so you see this progression of like who he is as a person, and then quite interestingly, obviously, like I think some people know, but maybe our international audience don't know. Maybe even some people in Britain that watches or listen to us don't know that he was the shadow Brexit secretary in
Yeah.
Jeremy Corbyn's
That's
government.
that's the time I saw him in real life when he was Brexit
Yes,
secretary. I walked
yes,
past him on the street. I was like, oh,
mental.
that's our Brexit guy.
That's
That
him.
he's in charge of Brexit. If
Yeah,
Labour were to win, if
yeah,
Corbyn won, that guy would be in charge of making Brexit good.
yep.
And those were all the thoughts I could have about him because he's otherwise entirely nondescript. I was like, oh, there he is. That's
Yeah,
the guy. There it
there he
goes.
is.
Yep. Well, yeah.
And now he's such a big wet boy. I think that we've made so many comments on Keir Starmer in like news stories in Red Planet, haven't we? We've talked so extensively about all the things that he's done in his run up to being elected, the flip flopping, the changes, and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to be one of these people to say like, oh, I told you so. But when
But that
everyone
is what this episode is for.
that is what this episode is. All these fucking losers. I wanted to call the title of this episode "The Americanization of British Politics," but I'm still happy with
We
Keir
should still
Starmer's.
discuss that. That is a worthwhile angle to look at.
That's what I'm saying because we have this situation where it is spookily similar to what people are saying about Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, right? It's like, no, well, you can't let the Republicans win because they're Republicans, and it's like, these people are saying, I'm comfortable with a genocide happening over there, just not here, where I have to look at it because I still won't do anything about it, but I'll have to see it, right? So that's kind of what those people are saying, and it's very similar to what people were saying in the run up to the election here. They would say, well, if you don't vote for Labour, the Tories will stay in, and now, wow, look at this, everyone voted for Labour, and the Tories are still in. Whoa, crazy. And we'll go into that. We'll obviously
Yeah.
go into
It's
that.
like it's an incredible magic trick, I think. So well, okay, right. So firstly, on what you said about, when he was younger, I'm reminded of a clip. It was around when the Queen died. Lol. And someone shared a clip of Starmer when he was younger saying like that he is completely for the abolition of the monarchy versus like what he's been saying, what he says now obviously is that like it's
Yes.
so important and blah 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 tradition return and like it's there are so many things you can find. It's not like he described himself as a socialist, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
like he was, but at the same time, it's not like he was, the most radical at any point. But I do think like it seems like it's probably the point where he became a QC and became involved in like first in like the legal system and then specifically became involved in the prosecution service. He became a cop, right? Go figure. Like he just became a cop. That's it. Like I think it's not that much of a mystery. It's just like there's actually a good bit in um this is my this is my weekly mention of Abolition Revolution by Avia Saraday and Shanice Octavia McBean on the show. But in Abolition Revolution, there's a point where they say like women who are in the police, like in the police, like have so many of these same like patriarchal, misogynistic, and racist attitudes and attitudes that are like violent and domineering and approving of or like excusing of sexual violence, all this stuff, right? And
Yeah.
the point the point they make in the book is like if these women didn't have these views when they joined, like it's something that you constantly kind of have to wonder over with police. It's like, does that job attract the worst fucking psychopaths, or does it turn people into the worst fucking psychopaths? But it's like yeah, what they say in the book anyway is just like those women probably not all of them were people who had those views to begin with. It's part of police culture is to like forcibly give people those beliefs, those attitudes, those behaviors. And like I think that being a prosecutor is yeah, just it's going to be straightforwardly when Sama became like this, right? Like I can't see a
Yeah.
way around it. It's just simply yeah, he would have just become the person he is now, become so much more conservative and so on because he was in charge of putting people in jail. Like that is
Yeah.
just a cop. That's being a cop, right?
Yeah.
Um,
When you're in, you are, we are, we're born into this world whereby there is a system that definitely it's designed to disempower, and everybody feels disempowered to some degree. Some people are obviously more disempowered than others. But certainly, if what Kier Starmer says, I don't know if the shit that he says about his dad is true or not. It's probably not. He's like, my father was a tool maker. Like, if he's not, whatever. Like, but if he was, like, sure. Like, I could believe that Kier Starmer grew up on an estate. I can believe it. I can believe it because I know people who've grown up on estates who've become like that. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those situations where it's like if you're disempowered and you have a shit life and you get bullied all the time and you get bullied because you've got no clothes because you smell because you can't afford to wash and shit like that and and I'm not saying that Keir Starmer had all that stuff happen to him, but if that is the case, if you've had a bit of a shit life, you want to start to control your life in any way that you fucking can, and that's why people become cops. People become cops because it gives them power. And people love that power because it means that you get to feel empowered in some way, whether or not you are able to sort of like, I don't know, match that with your apparently being a socialist in some way. I don't know how you would do
yeah,
that.
it's just
Um,
nuts to me. Like I remember reading a puff piece glowing bio about him, which was like using a picture of him from when he was a student and saying, "Oh, look, he could have been in a boy band. He's so gorgeous," and all this, like just disgusting, just like not journalism, just awful liberal slop. Um, where they were talking about his mum being sick when he was a kid, right? And like both my parents had cancer, right? Like my dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor when I was less than a year old. He spent 25 years slowly dying, right? My mum had breast cancer at one point. Both my parents were sick in different ways. And like the amount of help that my family needed that wasn't there just served as a lesson to me that we need a society that cares more and is more like functionally able to provide care to people. And like when I see that kind of shit that's like talking about like Keir Starmer's like background, his childhood, whatever, it is just like it's not baffling to me, but at the same time, like that he would turn out like this because it does happen to people. but like when they're trying to use it as an indication that he's so in touch because he knows about this stuff, right? It's they're patting him on the back for being like someone who has been through the stuff that should teach you to be a moral person who fucking cares and has become someone who agrees with ruling class ideology instead. It's the ruling class, the establishment, getting together and being like, we're so proud of our boy, right? For being like one of them, or he should have been, but he agrees with us. So he proves that we're right about all of this stuff. And that
That's
is his
so
function.
true.
That is
That's so
absolutely
true.
his function. You know, he's this
Yeah.
he's this horrible like token to their like bully circle. It's disgusting. It's so disgusting to me.
Yeah.
Um, all right, I could just get angrier and angrier.
No, that's
Uh,
fine. I think it's fine, but I think this is an episode designed to make people angry. This is the agitation part. Like we're going to be doing a couple of episodes in the future where we're going to be doing the Jane McAlevey organizing for
mm,
power, but in Red Planet episodes. So
yeah,
this is the
just piss
first
everyone off
conversation
more.
where we're just making you really angry, and then in the next one we're going to empower you, and then in the next one we're going to fucking give you the vision and etc. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think
Um,
it's yeah. Go ahead, Sophie. Sorry.
well, all right. So let's talk. Maybe to take a slightly more practical discussion avenue, I think let's talk for a second about the Americanization thing. I do think this is a really interesting topic, and I have everyone get their drinks ready. A David Graeber line about it. So,
Yes.
so about I have never been able to actually find this interview clip, but it's commonly cited that Graeber said the Labour Party only comes into power in the UK once every few Conservative administrations to give the Tory party time to regroup and like figure out what their deal is. Like buy them time to just like figure out their next strategy and what they're doing from this point onwards, right? So like the so okay. So there's a lot to say about this idea, right? You firstly, right, this attributes a lot of intention to a system, right? And I might have to to do the full unpacking of my feelings about that. I would have to like walk people through the essays that I've got for my like essay collection for my book that I want to write. Like this, I have a lot of stuff about like systematic thinking and like social organisms in a thing I want to write. It's called Organ Epistemic Investigation of a World Witnessing Itself. Um, but right, I've thought a lot about like the ways that systems don't have intentionality. They don't have memory. They don't have a self-awareness. They don't have thoughts, desires, etc. Right, but they are capable of acting quite like they do. Right, and we as people who have all those things, right, or at least, and that's a complicated question of psychology. Like we perceive ourselves to have like a self and all conscious rational thoughts and all this stuff, but it's messy. We project that onto social systems and we see shit happen and we're like, America wants this, right? Israel is doing this because Israel wants this and has this plan and remembers that it whatever, and like we talk as if they're people, as if they're thinking things, right? And I think it's worth just like making sure we have a fully like intentionless understanding of that statement, that Labour rotates in to give the Tories time to regroup and figure out their strategy, because like it's a systemic statement. It's about how our electoral system functions, and it's not a plan. It's not orchestrated by like six guys in a room somewhere. And I just
No.
think it's important to say that, right?
Yeah.
Not just to be like I'm stopping conspiracy theories here, but just to say what is happening is more interesting and we should understand what is happening,
Well, it's
right?
not. It's not even. You couldn't even remotely call it a conspiracy theory because it's provable. It's evidenced in the fact that there have been 100 days since Keir Starmer was voted into office,
Yep.
and the Tory party have been extremely quiet, and that's because they don't have a leader. So there hasn't been anyone in the Houses
Yep.
of Parliament doing the whole. I'm going to argue with Keir Starmer about stuff. Well, I think there has been, but I don't think it's been in the same sort of
Sure.
in the same sort of manner, but like they don't have a leader. They're doing a leadership sort of
Yeah,
promo thing at the moment. There's
yeah,
lots of talk about Kemi Badenoch
yeah,
wanting to be leader. There's lots of talk of Robert Jenrick, all these like vile, disgusting ghouls, basically like
yeah.
pushing the party further and further to this extremely reactionary fascist
Of course.
way, and that is because they've seen the reform. Vote intention, and they want to capitalize on that,
Hmm.
right? And of course, it is just where the Tories sit with politics in general. They're disgusting, they're fascists, and I think the unique thing about it being in Britain is that whoever is a Tory voter is going to remain a Tory voter, no matter how middle of the road Tory they are. They're just not used to the idea of voting Labour, and everything that Keir Starmer has done in this 100 days, and the scrutiny that's been put on him by the media, particularly with the bribes stuff, which we're going to get onto in a bit. Well, accepting gifts, they call it. I don't know if I can call it bribes, alleged bribes, let's say. But that has been massively damaging. Still, further still, it's validated all these Tory supporters who are like, well, even though it's Keir Starmer, I still think it's Labour, and this, that, and this. All this capitulating he's done to the right is for nothing, because the people who are voting for the right are not going to vote for fucking Labour. I also want to, I also just want to like really briefly get this in, because I think that while we're talking about the disgusting, horrible stuff, I think we should pepper it with like some funny bits. So I wanted to talk about the fact how he wrote for our favourite paper, The Sun,
Jesus
didn't
fucking
he?
Christ.
Didn't he? You saw
He
this,
keeps doing
right?
it. He keeps giving them
He keeps
interviews.
doing it.
He writes for them like fucking. He loves the Sun.
So I want to talk about this specific one that was recent. So
Yeah.
Kier Starmer wrote in the Sun, and the headline is an opinion piece. The Sun, he's written for the Sun. Obviously, the implications of writing for the Sun when you're the Prime Minister of the Labour Party is disgusting and vile, just in general. Normalising that paper that made all these horrific allegations against working class football supporters at Hillsborough who died.
My
Um,
uncle died at his. My uncle died
literally,
at Hillsborough. It is
literally,
literally personal for me now.
literally,
Me
Sophie's
and
uncle.
Starmer, it's on site. You little
Yeah,
bitch.
for real. And so he did this. He did this opinion piece. The headline is literally, "I will not sacrifice great British industry to the drum banging, finger wagging net zero extremists." And it's like, okay, so you've written for this paper that is
Yeah.
horrific. It's anti-working class, and you've done this horrific anti-working class piece in the paper for them. Now, that's bad enough, but I want to talk about some of the Sun articles that have come out about Keir Starmer in the last few days. So one of them says, Labour's first 100 days have reeked of greed, stupidity, and pure spite. Do you feel like you've been cheated? Then another article on the same day, Keir Starmer's first 100 days as PM ends in embarrassment as 1 billion cash boost for Britain axed. Another one there. What else have we got here? Angela Rayner snubbed from top level. There's all these
Yeah.
anti-Labour
Yeah.
stuff. Another
Yeah.
one 2 days ago. Oh, it's this one's really good, because I'm not just going to read you the headline of this one. I'm going to read you the first line because it's absolutely fucking brilliant. This headline says, Sir Keir Starmer accused of jeopardising free speech and fueling university no platforming surge. And the first line says, woke Keir Starmer has jeopardised free speech at universities and triggered an onslaught of no platforming, the Tories warned last night.
Oh,
So
Christ.
it's I think it's the reason that this is funny. Like, obviously, you have to laugh, otherwise you'd cry. But it is just such a this is Keir Starmer all over. I think this encapsulates perfectly his sort of whole shit, right? Which is like, he is sat there going, I'm going to capitulate to the right. It's going to be really good. The
Yeah.
adults are back in charge,
Yeah.
etc., etc. I'm going to write for the Sun. I'm going to show people that I'm not scared. I'm going to do this. And then the Sun is just absolutely fucking comes through and dumps through him. Like, there are so many articles, anti-fucking Keir Starmer articles in the Sun. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's important to mention that.
Yeah, big time. I
Yeah.
think I mean, if it is opaque to anyone, I'll just say quickly, he's doing it's very dumb what he's doing, but we'll just walk through it. He's thinking, I have the Labour supporters, I have the people who'll vote for Labour. What I don't have is the Tory supporters. I need to get the Tory supporters because those people aren't voting for Labour yet. And if I do things that Tories like, then I'll get their votes. And it's just it's mind-numbing, right?
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. It is so devoid of any kind of
Do you know
principle.
what? I've just had an absolutely perfect comparison, and it's like Martin Prince from The Simpsons.
Yeah,
You know, like Martin Prince is always
he
trying to do this
has
stuff where he's
he
like,
has such Martin Prince energy through and
huge,
through.
huge Martin Prince energy.
Yeah,
Martin Prince is always trying to do these things like,
yeah.
I'm gonna do this thing and it'll make me really popular. And it's
Wait,
like,
Starmer and Streeting and the right wing of the party sabotaging Corbyn, right, during the previous elections is literally that a vote for Bart is a vote for anarchy.
yes, exactly, exactly. That is exactly what it is for sure. Sorry. Anyway, I just
So
had
what
to
was the
jump in with that.
comparison you were saying about
No, the
you had a
comparison was that
specific
he is
one?
Martin
He
Prince.
just
Like
is
that,
Martin Prince.
he
Yeah,
just is
yeah,
Martin Prince.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. It just it's really real. Um, yeah. Right. So okay. All right. So we see over and over again in like radical election results, when we see like big left-wing victories, like we had the one in France with the Nouveau Front Populaire, that like when there is a good amount of imagination on display, people are incredibly receptive to it, right? People are like so ready to vote for something that is not like what has already existed, right? But this kind of imagination is just like it's out the window in Britain. Like it just can't happen in Britain. And there's a lot of like moneyed interest tied up in why. There's a lot of class power tied up in why that is. But like there's also, I think, a cultural political issue here, which is like the issue of being a former empire that is now like the financial organ of the conglomerate imperialist capitalist structure that we have, right? Like there's a sense of being like sitting on top of a big amount of power, and if you make the wrong move, you could lose all that power. And it's like it's ridiculous because Britain has had shrinking power for like decades and decades now, but that attitude is still politically ingrained. Like we have to keep on making the right decision, the careful decision, right? And the ways in which we're able to be bold and like show like imagination, really like take a big leap, right? Those all need to be in favor of being more imperialist, right? Because it's just entrenched that Britain is an imperialist country within our establishment, with our ruling class, within our political class. Um, so this is why you have all the sabotaging of Corbyn, right? But you have a big leap in a different direction with Thatcher. You have a big leap in a different direction with David Cameron, right? And now you have these big leaps towards the far right and towards fascism in the Tory party now, right? All of this is okay because it's big leaps towards imperialists, like, well, towards being the character of a fucking former imperialist nation in decline. Like all of that makes sense within the framework that like British electoral politics uh, has laid out and has deeply entrenched. Um, but like Starmer can't imagine that like putting out a radical plan that is like good for the people would get the people's interest because he's just like I don't know, it's like a language, right? Like it's just like if you just speak this language, you just can't imagine using other words. And like they in Westminster, like they speak this language, which assumes that everyone else speaks the same language as them too, right? But
Yeah.
it's like to a voter, like okay, you put out like plans that just make it clear that like you will actually help people, and people respond to that. Like Corbyn, despite all of the media shit like against him, still had so much popularity because his policies like were exciting to people.
Yeah.
Um, and like the media absolutely massacred him, like relentlessly for years and years and years, and still do even whenever he comes up. But like, but it should have been a lesson to anyone who like wants like Labour to be like a viable electoral project that like that being more left wing does that. It pulls in votes, right?
Yeah.
Why don't they learn that lesson? And this has to do with that Graeber idea, right? That Labour comes in to give the Tories time to regroup. It's like the Tories are effectively the ruling party of the UK. That's the other thing that Graeber said as part of that same line was like the Conservatives, they are the ruling party of the UK. Labour just comes in every once in a while and it just gives time to find a new strategy that will like inevitably lead back to people being fucking sick of the Conservatives and ready to get rid of them. And then they get rid of them, Labour comes in, and Labour becomes disastrously unpopular, right?
One thing. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say one thing that we did, the planning group for the AMM, the GMTU AMM did, is we took some inspiration from Toronto Tenant Union, who do little fun activities for people while they're at their all members meeting, because it's engaging and it's nice and it's fun and it's good to do. We did. For this AMM, we did a housing crossword. I'm just showing it to people who could see on the screen. I don't know if you could see it too well, but one of the answers there, if you look carefully, you could see number one down is Labour, right? Yeah. And the clue for number one down is UK political party with the most landlord MPs. Now, people would probably look at that, because I did actually when I looked at that, and thought, well, that would be the Tories, wouldn't it? Right. But actually not anymore. Now that they're in power, actually, no, they've got the most landlord MPs. So, not only is it that biding of time for the Tories for them to regroup and get better, do a leadership contest, figure what they're all about, but it's also carrying water for the Tories now, in that, like, and I think this is a good sort of segue into the sort of like mini stories that we were going to sort of talk about with regards to what Kier Starmer's been up to. Because one of the first things we wanted to talk about is Kier Starmer unequivocally standing with Israel, despite some members of his cabinet saying some things that are not quite that, but then also doing other things that are that. David Lammy, I'm talking about you fucking prick. And there's just like so much to it where it's like, he knows that this is what he should be doing. We're America's lapdog. This is something that, like, when we've been doing outreach with GMTU and we've been speaking to like asylum seekers, especially asylum seekers from like America, it's like, well, you got to remember that the UK is the US's lapdog. Do you know what I mean? So you're gonna have like a hard time trying to claim asylum in the UK, because the UK is just gonna go, well, the US is not a dangerous country, right? They're just gonna say that, right? So it's like it's such a bizarre situation where Kier Starmer is in. He stood there 12 days ago on the special podium that they have for prime ministers when they do press releases, and said, "I stand with Israel." This was the one when he said sausages, right? This is the time when he said sausages, or was that previous?
No, he said sausages at the Labour conference.
He said it at the conference, that's right. Yeah. This one, he didn't say sausages this time, but he said something just as silly, which is, "I love Israel and I think they're really good and we're going to keep supporting them."
It's all pablum. It's all fucking gibberish. He might as well have just said sausages. Not even release the sausages. He might as well have just said sausages over and over again for 50 minutes. And then Israel could have said, "Great, proud of you, good job." America would have said, "Great, good job, you nailed it. You're part of the order. You didn't say Free Palestine. That was the only thing you had to not say."
Yep.
And Biden would say, "Where am I?" And then everything would carry on.
And I think it's also important to, really focus on the flip-flopping of Starmer, because, this is what he's known for. And there have been so many conflicting pieces of information running up to this, where Kier Starmer's been saying, like, "Oh, I think maybe we should think about banning some arms sales to Israel. We're going to ban 30% or whatever it was that they did," which is just like not nearly enough. And then, obviously, like a few days later, it's like, "Oh, Iran is so bad and evil. Oh, these scary brown people are fighting each other, and oh my God, we're going to support Israel." Like it's that flip flopping of like, "Oh, I need to keep this imperial line," but also like there are so many people in my party who are like absolutely sickened with what I'm doing and what I've done to the Labour Party, and like Zara Sultana, like, fucking bless her, honestly, like she's done so much to like try and fucking like really hold the Labour Party to account. Like, she's always up there in Parliament talking about this stuff. She's always talking about the genocide. She's always talking about how we need to stop arms sales to Israel. And you know, it isn't just her in the party. There are a lot of right wingers in the party now. You know, and I I was speaking to a person, a 70-year-old guy, 70-year-old guy who's a member of the union. He's a great guy, and he was talking to about Luke Akehurst, because we'd mentioned it when we were in the pub after the all members meeting. And you know, this guy is quite, I would say he's quite reserved. He's not like an angry man. He's quite a sort of, you know, he doesn't really get super passionate about one thing or the other. He's quite passionate about organising. But this was the most sort of mad that I've ever seen him. And he just looked me dead in the face and he went, "Luke Akehurst is a terrible, terrible cunt." And I was like, you know, he's the most racist of all the Zionists, and I was like, I know, Jay, it's horrible, isn't it? I know, mate, it's disgusting. You know, it's one of those things where it's like the people in the Labour Party, or the people who've seen the Labour Party and organised with them over the last like 50 years or whatever. It's you know, very, very difficult.
It's funny you bring up Zara Sultana as well, because like she is one of the people who's been suspended from the Labour Party has got a 6 month suspension because she voted not to scrap the she voted to scrap the two-child benefit cap.
Yeah,
Right, like it's another of Starmer's like horrific policies, is trying to keep the two-child benefit cap and basically just hurt poor families that have more kids. Right, just again,
yeah.
naked class warfare, just like the eternal grinding genocide of the poor that is British society. And like, yeah, as you say, like there's one MP with fucking principles who's like standing up to these awful ghouls. And
Yeah.
what happens? Just immediately get out of the party.
Yeah. And you know, it's so funny because if you were to say something like that about China, that you're only allowed two children in China, all of a sudden that's really bad and authoritarian and wrong. But when,
Or that people who oppose that policy get kicked out of the party because they have to have complete ideological cohesion.
yeah,
Yeah.
whoa,
Ooh,
whoa.
ooh.
But it's fine when you do it
Yeah.
in Britain, actually, in your Keir Starmer's government.
But
Um,
it's not just kids he hates. This is
that's
important.
true. That's
He
true.
doesn't just hate kids. He doesn't just hate Palestinians, which, again, Palestine is like 50% of the population of Palestine is kids as well. So that could be written off as just more Starmer hates children.
That's a combo hate. Like
Yeah.
he finds it easy to hate Palestinians because they're all children. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
easy for him to do that. Yeah.
He heard they're mostly children, and he's like, oh, great. Okay, well, you don't need, actually, I don't even need any kind of bribe for this, or gift, or alleged bribe. I'm just on board. Starmer says, fuck them kids. That's just his policy.
He really does.
But he also hates old people.
He really
Yep.
does. He really
We
does.
touched on this in the news a few weeks ago. We have a winter fuel allowance in the UK. It should be really obvious what that's for. As soon as you hear those words, it's for old people to be able to heat their houses and not freeze to death. Yeah, Starmer's been relentlessly pushing through plans to cut this, right? Like it's this ridiculous, like I mean, this too is part of the time to recuperate thing. There's this whole language of like the adults are back in charge and they're going to make like tough decisions, right? So Labour comes in as the party who are going to implement austerity measures and like cut the budget down and do things responsibly, because like it's understood that the Conservatives are like a bunch of like reckless children. Like it's just understood that like in terms of leadership and parliament and government, that like the Conservatives will just do the greediest, like most like eyes too big for your stomach, running towards the big mountain of food like behavior that they can possibly do, right? Whereas like Labour needs to come in and be the responsible ones, and what apparently what being the responsible ones means in this instance is just cutting off old people's ability to like heat their homes. Unbelievably disgusting.
Yeah, and it's not, it's not like old people in the UK haven't already died even when there was a winter fuel alliance, like they
Right.
allowance. Sorry, they have died from the cold. This is a product of climate change. It's a product of capitalism getting worse. Again and again and again, over and over and over again. And I think that, like, yeah, you're just spot on about it. So if it's just this insane politics of cruelty that it is supposed to be like, we're making the hard decisions, we're doing the things that's right for Britain. Oh, we're going to have to suffer, but we'll get through it. And it does just come back to this kind of like, if this were to be something that like came as breaking news, North Korea decides to starve old people. They're
Right. To
not they're
make
not
the
allowed to heat
budget
their
work.
homes. Yes, because they don't have enough money, because they can't handle money, because they're communists and it doesn't make sense. They don't understand money, whatever. Right? This would be seen as like so vile and disgusting, but it's completely fine when Keir Starmer does it, because we're in Britain, and the big boys, they've got their pants on and they're not wet. Um, you know, they're not full of poo, sloppy, horrible poo. So he's
Thank you,
letting
Rob.
old people freeze. Yeah, sorry about that. He's letting old people freeze. In terms of like what there is to say about this, there isn't really much else to say about it. Like you said it, like
I
you
think
basically said
I
it.
want to highlight that thing I said about he's been relentlessly pushing this through. Like
Yeah.
there have been so many people who are even pretty diehard members of his ideological project who have been like, this is too rich for my blood. I'm gonna vote against what you're doing here.
Hmm.
I'm gonna like rebel against this vote. And he still hasn't changed course on it. I think the link that you put in the notes for it was winter fuel cut impact was not assessed, says Starmer. Like Starmer himself saying that like he's not got any analysis for how it will affect the country, for how it will affect old people, it will affect anyone. Just like it's a number in the budget, we can
Yeah.
save this much money by doing this. And
Yeah.
again, right, like we spend so much money on the fucking military, we spend so much money on like bolstering like you know our financial services because it's like such an important sector to the UK. But like there isn't the money for old people to not freeze. It's so fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
Like I've on this stuff about like the grown-ups making the grown-up decisions, like I for a few years now have read a lot of like liberal slop, right? I've read a lot of the stuff that like a lot of the opinion pieces, the shit from the Atlantic, the New Statesman. The New Statesman is like very much like the neoliberal like magazine in favor of like labor being neoliberal, right? What have you got? The Economist, the Guardian Weekly, all these kinds of publications like put out this just like endless liberal slop for this presumed consumer who is just like wants to think they're plugged into politics, but wants to apply absolutely no like moral question ever,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so like a lot of their shit is explaining why it's actually the most moral decision anyway to just agree with the neoliberal establishment as much as you possibly can, right? It's just incredible mental gymnastics. And like I think that having read a lot of that stuff, I think that it's important to highlight the idea of realism, right? Like they go back to this idea of realism over and over and over again. And the concept of like realpolitik is literally like as popularized by Henry fucking Kissinger in the mainstream discourse. Like, is this idea that like what already exists is the path of least resistance, and therefore it's the most likely thing to be viable. And so the closer your proposals are to what already exists, the more viable they are, and therefore they're grown up decisions,
Right.
right? And so more cuts to benefits, more cuts to the safety of old people and the health of the nation, right? These are closer to what we're used to,
Mm.
therefore they're the real decisions,
Yeah.
right? But if you put forward a radical plan like a national food service, this is something under Corbyn, right? It was a proposal to do a national food service similar to the National Health Service, but just tackling a second basic fundamental human need, right?
Yeah.
Healthcare is one of them, food is one of them. Okay, so we'll just give people food. No one goes hungry anymore. There's a national food service. And it's just like, no one wouldn't vote for that. Just on the face of it, right? With no like fucking ideological poisoning in their ear from Rupert Murdoch's fucking Grimo worm tongue ass press, right? you wouldn't be like, no, I want people to starve. I don't want there to be that. You wouldn't naturally be like, oh, who will pay for it or whatever. And if you were, right, your friend would immediately turn to you and be like, I'm pretty sure people being fed will mean more people can work and contribute to the economy. So it'll probably pay for itself. And then
Yeah,
you check out the numbers. Oh, look, it would pay for itself,
yeah.
just like how a stronger NHS would pay for itself, right? All this
And
stuff,
also,
right?
a
Gone.
new a national food service would mean that people would need healthcare less
Yep.
because they would be, making sure that people are eating healthy, etc.,
Yep.
etc., and therefore wouldn't have to use the NHS. It
Yep.
all looks after itself. It's just something that just should exist.
Literally, right? But that's not grown-up decisions, right? And grown-up politics means taking the tough decisions. It always means hurting people. It always means hurting the poor specifically, somehow, right? And this is the specific nuts and bolts of how, right? Is that it's realism and it's seen as being more achievable because it's closer to
Yeah.
what already exists. But then you have shit like, let's go back to that awful tulpa Wes Streeting again for a second, right? Like my personal public enemy number one. He should not be people should like that motherfucker should not be able to dine in public restaurants. If people see Wes Streeting in public, they should make him as unhappy as possible by whatever means necessary. He is harming marginalized children. He is
Yeah.
an he is an empty shell that is being animated by Margaret Thatcher's malicious ghost. He is an
Yeah.
awful piece of shit,
He does
and
look like. Oh, sorry.
he does look like
I was going to say he does look like two things. One, like one of those ceramic boys, like a
yeah
ceramic doll. Like if you were to like tap his cheek, it would just go and like crack, and there'd be nothing inside. And then, like in Twin Peaks: The Return, all this like
yeah
black smoke would go,
yeah
and he
yeah
would just whatever.
and flies.
And he also looks like a really, really, really well done roast chicken, like with like a basted chicken, like just really well done.
Where's fucking Streeting, right? Is there the ripest, roastedest boy of Starmer's like making grown up decisions project, right? He gets a little pat on the head from Starmer every day before bedtime, and he's there supposedly making these like tough grown up decisions, and he says he's going to use Chat GPT to fucking fix NHS wait times.
Yeah, I
He
love
says he's going
that.
to use AI to
Yeah,
improve NHS wait times.
he's got such a mind.
Is that grown up politics? Is that
Yeah.
grown up politics? This is embarrassing. That
Have
is
we
fucking embarrassing.
have we touched on the fact that they do actually refer to themselves as being the grown-ups back in charge,
Yeah,
don't they? And they're always
yeah.
talking about grown-up politics and stuff like that. And I don't know if anyone realizes just how on the nose that is because they do hate kids. Like
They
everything bad,
hate they
everything
hate
bad is
kids.
childish. Every socialist idea is something that a baby would think of, which actually, again. We really do have to talk about like youth liberation because it's like, well,
Yeah,
when you're a baby, right, when you're just learning what the world is and stuff, and you're asking loads of questions, you're doing it with your needs in mind, right? So you're like, parent, why people starving? Oh, because they are. Why there's loads of food? Why don't we give people food? I don't understand. And it's like these are
yeah,
really just like
yeah,
normal things to think
yeah,
about. Like it's really fucking normal.
yeah, yeah. But oh, they made bad decisions. What why do we let them? Why
Yeah,
why is it why do we have a society where it's possible to make bad enough decisions that you
exactly.
don't get food and healthcare and everything
Yes.
you fucking need? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. Wes Streeting. I'm trying to backtrack to where I was. Wes Streeting is they made Tony Blair in a vat in a lab to do Margaret Thatcher's policies, but with a Labour brand on it. They had some goop left over. They made Kier Starmer. He came out squarer. That's what happens when the process, you run it again. The next guy is going to be more square. They were
Steve from
almost
Minecraft. It's
they
gonna be
were
Jack Black.
they were almost out of goop. They had to dilute it to make Wes Streeting. It's why he came out a bit wrong. And he's more square. And he banned puberty blockers for trans kids. because he's a scumbag. Because I just say he's a fucking scumbag, and I hate him. And I'm just gonna say I hate him. Um,
Whoa.
what else is there? That's
That's
more
some pretty
hating kids.
principled politics there from Sophie from Mars. Crazy.
Fucking hate that guy so
Yeah.
much. Okay. Uh, tell me about how much Kid Starver, Sir Queer Harmer, Sir Israel Armour, loves bribes.
Allegedly, yeah, he does allegedly love bribes. So I think the important thing to remember about this is that like I would not be like okay, so MP's expenses has always been a massive, massive, massive sort of newspaper topic. It's been a huge topic for news discussion panels, question time, all this kind of stuff. MP's expenses has always been stuff like, oh, this random MP from Buckinghamshire has got like several different homes, and he like does the maintenance and claims it back through MP's expenses, and it's like fucking £20,000 a year or something. It's all stuff like that, and it's just completely corrupt and disgusting and vile. And so I guess I'm prefacing this by saying that like Keir Starmer is not a it's not like a unique thing to Keir Starmer. This is just like what it's like to be in the belly of the beast in the seat of power in Westminster. If you have a seat in the Houses of Parliament as voted for by the electorate, you will be able to claim expenses and you can get away with fucking murder. I might not even be embellishing the point there. I feel like there might have been a scandal where someone was killed in the past or something. I don't know. I wouldn't like to guess on that, but I feel like that's like ringing a massive bell in my brain about politics. But anyway, like you could just claim back a bunch of stuff if you're an MP, and it only gets scrutinised every now and then. And when it does get scrutinised, the public go, "What can we fucking do about it?" And nothing happens. It's kind of one of those where it's like it's one of these like consistent points. But Keir Starmer, it's been a good thing still to have it be so in the public eye again, because it means that people are thinking about it again. I think it's always good for us to think about it and reassess what's going on with politics. And I think that Keir Starmer accepting like a season ticket. He got he got the cost of 6 Taylor Swift tickets. He 4 tickets to the races. I don't know what the races mean. This is a BBC article I'm reading, so I don't know what the races is. It must be like Cheltenham, the posh ones where people
Yeah,
wear hats and all that, and
yeah.
everyone ends up really pissed. And
I'm guessing it's not the dog races. It's going to be the horse races. Yeah, he wouldn't
why?
be
Yeah, well, I don't know. He is.
unless he put on a flat cap.
That was the part of his.
As part of his pretending to be working class brackets a Tory, right?
I
puts
love
on.
going to watch the dogs. I love it. It's so good. I put loads of bets on. I like to have what's this called? A pint? No, a pint. I like to have that with my mates.
He loves pints with his mates.
Yes.
There was another one. There was a clothing rental agreement with a high-end designer, and the way that the BBC have put this is so bizarre. Favoured by his wife, Lady Starmer. I didn't know that she was a lady. Actually, apparently she is.
Yeah.
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 So, like, I think that this kind of stuff. It's all freebies from wealthy donors, wealthy donors who essentially are wanting to influence British politics by, basically, giving money to a certain political party so that they
It's
can
this
have.
distinction made where it's not, if it would be a bribe to give someone money and be like, do this thing, you'd be bribing them to do a thing specifically. But if you're just someone who obviously has really obvious interests in politics, like being from the fossil fuel industry and wanting to not have the fossil fuel industry shut down to save all life on Earth.
Yeah.
And you just give them a bunch of money. That's apparently not a bribe.
And it's so so like incredibly obvious to everyone, what is going on. And it's quite funny that he, when he's been questioned about it by press and all this kind of stuff, he said things like, "I think it was the right decision to take these payments," and it's kind of like, well, what so it's just like a politician's answer, isn't it? It's a politician's answer to escape any kind of accountability. Not that there would be any accountability. Now, the thing is that apparently he's decided that he's going to pay £6,000, repay £6,000 in gifts after the donation row. And this is speculation at this point, and I wouldn't like to say that the views expressed on Red Planet are true in any way. I don't have any anything to back this up. But to
I've
me,
never said anything true.
Yeah, it's true. We just come on here and we just it's just like a clown show, essentially. Look, it's a clown show. Like we're just doing a clown show. It's silly. It's whatever. It doesn't mean anything. I think that sounds a little bit like a great. Oh. There you go. So now we can say anything. So I think repaying £6,000 in gifts sounds like a thing that you could say that you're going to do, but actually there's no way to prove that it happened. I think it's a really easy thing to say, like, I'm going to pay back £6,000, and then it's something that you could kick into the grass for long enough so that people forget about it. Now that's complete speculation.
Also, is that it? Is it 6,000? Like, is that it? Like, because if that's all it takes to buy Kier Starmer, like, I'm just
we
saying,
we could all put in and ask him to reverse the ban on puberty blockers. Yeah, exactly. It's just like such. I mean, I don't know how much he's received in bribes. I think I was hearing like alleged bribes. I don't know these
he's
gifts.
Received 0 in bribes.
He's received 0 in bribes.
He's received 100 trillion squillion in gifts.
Yes. This is the thing. It's like we don't know, like, truly how much there is, because there's been numbers in the papers, and it's like, well, are these numbers true? Like, is it the real extent of how much money he's actually gotten? With courting the ruling class, because that's what he's doing. He's writing for the Sun, and that means that you are like chilling out with Rupert Murdoch. Like, this is just like a thing. You're going to be going to these board meetings. You're going to be meeting these important CEOs, etc., etc. So you're going to be meeting people with a lot of money. So I think like the £10,000 or the £20,000 or whatever it was, the number that was being floated around a few weeks ago, I think that's quite conservative in the sort of estimation of how much he might have received. Personally, just from a personal opinion, that's just my personal opinion. But it's kind of one of these situations where it's like it's so clearly obvious. I think as well, it might be a sort of signifier that he knows his days are numbered, in that he accepted so much in bribes. I keep saying fucking bribes.
Take the money and run. That's what he's doing. He's just take the fucking money and run. Like he's going to be out of there in absolutely no time.
Yes,
and
for
he's
real.
Just pocketing as much as he can on the way out.
Yeah,
he took that. He took down a picture of Margaret Thatcher, and there was a little paper, like a scandal in the papers about it. He probably took it home. He probably took it home and put it in his bedroom. Honestly,
yeah. He's like consistently every day stealing more and more pens from the Downing Street office. He's like, like his like civil servant staff. They're like, Mr. Prime Minister, my mug went missing. My Percy Pig mug.
I haven't seen it.
Don't know what you're on about, and there's just like a big.
I haven't seen it.
It's like a big. Yeah, he's drinking out of it.
He's drinking right then.
That's it right there, Sir Prime Minister. He's like, no, it's not. This is my own Percy Pig mug from home.
My one.
Yeah.
He asks his aides for like 20 pens a day. He's always taking another note every single time. Biden comes to visit, and he shakes his hand, and he's missing his cufflinks afterwards.
I don't know. I know that you're like, you have like, I can't remember if it's some relation to Norwich or Norfolk or something like So like, you know who Alan Partridge is, right? Like the Steve Coogan character, right? Yeah. So I've always said that I think Kier Starmer sounds like Alan Partridge. He's got like a similar kind of voice. He's kind of like one of these like, quite upper class sounding accents and this, that, and the other. And that's quite similar to Alan Partridge. And I think what's even funnier, the more and more that I'm learning about him, is that he's actually like quite like Alan Partridge in real life. And I think I'm probably going to really enjoy I'm Alan like a rewatch of I'm Alan Partridge, but just pretending the whole time that it's Kier Starmer after his after his prime ministership, like,
Yes.
and his life is just going downhill. I'm actually probably going to start doing that tonight after the show. But yeah, no, I think that is it. He's just like he's nicking stuff
Yeah.
from Downing Street, and he's like going around like all the payphones in the Houses of Parliament and looking for like change and shit. Like,
He jingles when he walks along the street.
and that is it. Like
His suit jacket is heavy.
he's
It's
putting
just
on
full
like
of everything he's put in there.
he's putting on like a fake mustache and a nose when he leaves Westminster, and he's like pretending to not be Keir Starmer because he doesn't want to pay any money in taxes. Like he's like, I need to save my expenses for this other stuff actually, that I'm going to be paying for, which is like a private jet to Mumbai or some shit.
He goes into Waitrose where they got some free samples going, and he goes past the same one over and over again, pretending to be different guys each time. And
no, I'm Mr. Snrub.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the point is, he takes a lot of gifts.
A lot of gifts.
From
Gifts.
rich industry folks, and as you said earlier, he wrote in the Sun about anyone who favors net zero and the planet being livable in 100 years' time is a drum banging, finger wagging extremist, and that's why in the notes it says Sir Planet Warmer loves fossil fuels. So this was from a piece that was saying that was talking about Labour's plans around climate are all focused on carbon capture and storage, which, if people are familiar with my work, carbon capture and storage is fucking gibberish. How do I restate it concisely here? Like, you're imagining a technology that hasn't been invented yet, that is just a little box fan that sucks carbon out of the air and then puts the carbon away where it's safe and it isn't hurting anyone. And don't worry, the carbon isn't real anymore. It can't hurt you.
And what they're also going to do is they're going to have signs everywhere that says, no great deed was accomplished here. There's no need to investigate this place.
Yeah, and they'll have
all
pictures
really
of
good
Wes
stuff.
streeting so that people won't go in that area because he's just naturally unsettling because he's just a cunt to look at.
Thousands of what are those warriors that they uncovered in China, that like these thousands
terracotta warriors,
thousands of terracotta Wes streetings just all over.
So Wes streetings,
just glazed terracotta.
Anyway, so carbon capture and storage, right? It's this idea we're going to invent this thing, right? Now, in practical terms, where would this technology be deployed? Well, it would be deployed in power stations, ideally, and then as many places outside as well, just to generally suck it out of the atmosphere. But like, think of it as like a catalytic converter on your car, right? Like, you'd put it onto a fossil fuel power station, and it would massively reduce the emissions that are going out of the power station, right? Now, that's a real neat idea. If it had been invented, if after being invented it were implemented, and if after being implemented it worked, right? So hasn't been invented yet. That's just so important and can't be stated enough. It getting implemented would not be a thing that the government would actually like enforce and make happen, right? It's a thing that the government would hand over to a public-private partnership. And public-private partnerships frequently just don't fucking do anything, right? It's somewhere where money just disappears into the pocket of industry people, and then it just nothing gets implemented. But again, let's suppose it gets implemented. Okay, it would be considered a successful like run of this policy if it reduced emissions, right? Like, if it got implemented, they would consider it to have worked. If it worked in like, again, like a catalytic converter in your car, it doesn't reduce it to zero emissions. It just cuts down the emissions, right? And that would be a successful implementation in their eyes. But what we need is to stop polluting. We need to stop oil. We need to stop fossil fuels, right? We need to actually shut the industry down and stop actually burning any new fossil fuels to stop climate change. And so cutting down on the total emissions would just mean it was considered more viable to open more fossil fuel plants, right? Like backing carbon capture and storage is fundamentally a pro-fossil fuel position and is accelerating climate change, right? Because it's carbon indulgences, right? You know, in Catholic Church, people pay to be forgiven, right? It's part of the tradition is donations towards the church, indulgences is like helping you to be spiritually purified because you're giving away your money towards Jesus, right? It's the same fucking concept, but for pollution. It's just like we're implementing this stuff and it allows us to do more sin
Yeah,
because we're paying.
absolution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's so incredibly, important. This episode is kind of one of these situations where it's like, we don't do electoral politics here on Red Planet, but when you have something like this that is quite important, I think, to observe. I think it is important to talk at length about like why it is such a clown show, and why actually it is such a waste of time to dedicate any of your time to electoral politics, organizing and stuff like that. I think like to a degree, you shouldn't like cancel anyone in your friend group for voting Labour still or being a Labour member, and it's a waste of time. Like, I know people who are still Labour members because they're desperate to like try and use whatever power they have as a Labour member to try and make things better, and I respect that. I actually do respect that. It's like I've said here on the show multiple times. Oh, what, you think this organisation is problematic? Well, what are you doing about it? Are you trying to like influence it with the power that you can use within that organisation, or are you going to out-organise them? One is easier than the other, and both is actually the best way to do it. So at the end of the day, this isn't to shit on people who are trying desperately to influence Keir Starmer's opinion, like the trade unions who went to the Liverpool conference, who were there to say, like, we disagree with all these new policies. We think they're really shit, and actually we're going to vote against all of them, which is a really good demonstration of power. And, there's only so much that Starmer's going to be able to ignore the trade unions in the Labour fucking party before they just, abandon and start to support any particular new party, whether it be the Greens, whether it be the Liberal Democrats. Like, fuck knows what the future's got in store for the kind of, like, trade union movement in politics. But I think that it is... also, like, one thing that I did also want to say that I forgot about, and I've been thinking this for a while, actually, since I saw Kier Starmer first write in The Sun. They shouldn't be allowed to have the conference in Liverpool anymore. They shouldn't be allowed to fucking do that. Like, ever from the first day that he decided to write in The Sun, whoever fucking owns that building, like, they should have just had some scruples and said, you can't have your fucking conference here anymore, dog.
Absolutely.
Like, it is just so sickening.
Yeah.
But
I literally run out of town, and the town specifically is their pill. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that generally it's like, we have to make sure that everybody here remembers it is important to be aware of this stuff. It is important to be prescient of it. You can use it in conversations that you have with your organizing. Like, for example, if you're speaking to people who are extremely depoliticized, like, I'm not boasting again, like, I'm just saying GMTU organizes in some of the most deprived areas in the country. We just happen to have some of the most deprived areas of the country here in Manchester. And when you're speaking to people in those areas, they are so depoliticized that, they will immediately start to say things like, oh, well, the Labour government, they aren't really doing much, so why should I bother doing anything? Everything's fucking shit, and this, that, and the other. And that is a great jumping off point to be like, well, that's why you just fuck off electoral politics altogether and you organise with us. And that could be like a really powerful thing to say to someone. It's like, well, actually, people power is what you should put your energy into, rather than, putting your vote into something which you've done for decades. There's a saying in Harper Hay, where we've got one of our branches, is one of the most deprived areas in the country, sadly. And they have a saying there: put a red ribbon on a dog and people in Harper Hay will vote for it. Right. And that is just simply, it's literally what they say. And that's the thing. It's like, because people are so depoliticized, they're just like, oh, well, maybe Labour are the good ones, whatever, I'm just going to vote for them and hopefully it'll be all right, because they're desperate. Do you know what I mean? They're fucking desperate.
Right. But that desperation should be turned into political action outside the ballot box. There is just infinite, like to say 99.9% of your political action is outside the ballot box would be too big. So it would be too small. Like it needs to be, it can't be understated like the size of your vote actually. Like
Yep.
in terms of proportion to the rest of what you could do politically and what you do politically, because like even just existing in society is incredibly fucking political, and
Yeah.
especially if you rent, if you work, if you don't work, if you're disabled, if you're not disabled, if you're marginalized, if you aren't, like there is just so much to politics that is not your vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is
Yeah.
important for us to occasionally just point out what a fucking disgusting farce it is and how unplugged
Yeah.
it is from the people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there we go.
We were gonna have a shorter show this week anyway, so
Yeah,
that's why we've not really asked for questions.
yeah,
This week particularly, we are very well aware of how smart and good and clever our wonderful audience and listeners are, our watchers, because we know that you don't need to ask any questions about the clown show that is electoral politics. You're all very clever, and this was sort of a bit of an exercise in, you know, having a bit of a fucking moan about it, essentially, which is a fucking valid thing to do, especially when it's going so wrong. And we could have had it all, couldn't we? We could have had it all.
Oh, we could have had the
In
best boy.
2019. So we won't be doing a Q&A today, but
Right.
Sophie, I've heard that you've had some good homework in
Yeah.
mind for this episode.
I've mentioned already a few times about Wes Streeting, and it turns out there is actually a way that you can banish the demon that is inhabiting the hollow shell that is Wes Streeting's body, and send it back to the shadow realm forever for 5,000 trillion years. And that is with the two following homeworks. If you're in the UK, you can go check out the Instagram account Kids Are Dying Wes. This is part of the Trans Kids Deserve Better organizing. You can also find it just by going transkidsdeservebetter.org. All the stuff is there. You can get in touch with them, you can whatever. But the thing I want you to do is join in, if you're in the UK, join in on their coffin making campaign, because there is a campaign of making little paper coffins, right, decorating them and folding them up and then leaving them outside of Wes Streeting's office to remind him that every day he is killing kids. So that's what you should do if you're in the UK. That's your homework this week. If you're outside the UK, you can donate to support them financially. Trans Kids Deserve Better. Again, transkidsdeservebetter.org. There is a fundraiser to support the cricket kids, the kids who released the crickets inside LGBA. I am sure that if it goes beyond any money that they need for their legal fees, it will support them in every other way that they deserve. So that's, if you're inside the UK, get on that coffin action and leave a coffin outside Wes Streeting's office, so that he is reminded that his the demon soul that is animating his flesh puppet is not long for this world, and it will grow weaker when you leave a coffin outside his office. They believe they have like the paper for decorating and cutting out available to people. Again, you look it all up on transkidsdeservebetter.org. If you're outside the UK, please donate to support the cricket kids, and that will also make the demon weaker. Yep.
That's right. That's right. So that is it for Red Planet. Don't forget, we are a show. We require money. We require your money now. Please give it to us. It's patreon.com/red_planet. There are various different tiers that you can support us with. The biggest of which is the sicko tier. And if you support us with that much money, we give you a special thank you at the end of every show. So thank you so much to our sickos, JBP, Queen Pib, and Risk Inverse. Thank you so much for supporting us so much. Really, really appreciate you. But I'll tell you who I want to support. I want to support my sweet, gorgeous friend, Sophie from Mars. How can I do that? Where can I do that? Tell me where I need to go. What can I do? How can I support you?
Mule couldn't be doing more to support me, I think. He's one of the most supportive people in my life. But if other people want to support me, then who are strangers and don't know me, the financially would be the way. And you can do that through my Linktree, linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. There's a direct tip link there if you want to just send me some money. But you can also go to my patreon.com/Sophie from Mars and support me there. Get access to my videos early, get access to my essays. All the other links to all my other stuff is on Linktree. I should add a link to my Substack soon because I am going to be doing some writing that's not going to turn into videos. It'll go up there. Anyway, linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. All one word. But if you wanted to support Mule, where would you go?
Whoa! You could also go to Linktree. It's linktree.ee/DJ Mule. That's DJ MUEL. For those of you listening who don't know me already, I posted a new video. It's about the organising that I've been doing surrounding supporting Queers for Palestine in Manchester. It isn't really the official name. We've been kind of going by several different names. No Pride in Genocide Manchester, also Gay Shame Manchester, also the Palestine Queer Bloc. So various different stuff that I've been doing to either support those organisations or as part of these sort of very sort of self-selected orgs to basically show solidarity with Palestinians as queer people. Obviously, we understand that queer liberation is not spread through imperialism, so it's a bit of a video about that. Also tonight on my Patreon, I will be releasing at 11 o'clock, specifically timed for Red Planet audiences who might want to go ahead and support me, my movie review of The Substance. I saw it in theatres. It's quite possibly the best movie of the last decade. Really good. If you like themes, if you're into themes in your movies, there's lots. I would call it a smorgasbord of themes, and that is even more relevant because one of the themes is food in the movie. Well, actually, it's more sort of eating disorder related stuff, but it's very, very, very good and very, very, very powerful and very wacky and very funny and very silly. If you want to hear my thoughts about it, head on over to patreon.com/DJ MUEL and listen to my movie review of The Substance by being a tier 1 supporter. No, possum tier, £5. Give me £5 a month and you can listen to it. But thank you so much. Don't forget to obviously like and share the Red Planet stream and all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you next week. I'm pretty sure we got a guest lined up for next week, and they might be exciting, but I don't want to say anything in case it's not confirmed. But we've definitely got guests coming. I promise. We've got a good string of guests on the way that you're really going to enjoy. So stay tuned. Solidarity.
See you next week.
See you next
Bye.
time. Goodbye.